All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Morbid Symptoms, where we're going to kind of dig into a bit of a complex issue that the crossroads of Western feminism, geopolitics, the media, and also a bit of armchair psychoanalysis to look at maybe the unconscious, unknown reasons why so many Westerners, particularly Western feminists and media, seem to really love to hate the Taliban. Um, and that has something to do with dealing with their silence or complicity when it comes to what's going on in Palestine with not with women and children, but you know Palestinians in general. Um, so we're going to look at why do Western feminists. We're going to the kind of the theme of the show is why do Western feminists and Westerners in particular, well in general, but feminists and media in general, love to hate the Taliban, framing their oppression of the oppression of Afghan women as a humanitarian crisis and unquestionably a terrible thing that we need to up in arms. We need to do something about this while remaining silent or complicit when it comes to the suffering of Palestinian women under Israeli occupation, apartheid, and now the collective punishment, indiscriminate bombing, medieval siege, etc. I'll try to avoid the most perhaps accurate description because I don't want to scare off those who have a bit of a maybe have a different political understanding of the situation than we do. Anyway, I'm very happy that I am not here alone. I'm here with Sarah, aka Yellow Zello, and I'm glad she has some time to come and join with me today. And in particular, because she is a Western woman, she was born in the West. I'll leave it to you to determine her accent. But she converted to Islam, and she has been to Pakistan several times. So she's quite aware of Pashtun culture, which of course is what the Taliban is also Pashtun. Um, those evil devil people, all of them the same, one mind. Anyway, Yellow Zello, please introduce yourself, giving whatever information you want, and then we'll dive into this topic of why Western feminists and media really love to hate the Taliban, particularly since October 7th.
Good morning. My first time ever on a stream, I guess. So let's see how this goes. Um, yeah, I was born and raised in the United States, in upstate New York. Went to college, got a degree in anthropology. Ended up for 20 some years teaching martial arts and self-defense to primarily women and children. So that plays into all of my experiences, I guess, or interests. And a few years ago, went back to school to get a degree, and now I'm a therapist working in an outpatient mental health clinic. And that's one of the reasons why I'm anonymous is, for privacy of particularly my clients and myself, for that reason. So what else? Yes, so the connection to Islam about, what is it now, 20 some years ago, I was at a folk life festival, and there was a couple of Sufi singers playing at one of the stages. And I was like, wow, this is really this is really cool. And I kept going back, and I introduced myself. So here comes some chick with looking like whatever. And, they didn't speak very much English, but I managed, and this is before the internet, so I managed to connect with them and hook up with the person they were staying with in New York at the time, and went up to New York to see them, and then said, oh, I'm going to go to Pakistan. And this was 2003 or 4, so it was after 9/11.
Okay.
I was like, and I've traveled a little bit on my own, various places here and there. So, and my parents have a very different background because my siblings were born in Malaysia, and they're Catholic. My parents were Catholic, but they did overseas work, etc. So I was never totally in an isolated bubble for growing up in the States in rural America. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Pakistan, and I And they were, and most of my contact was with their son, who was 18 or so at the time, because he spoke English. It was at the beginning of when you could like chat on Messenger. I mean, this is way,
Okay.
like,
Okay, yeah.
way back. So, and so along the lines, I made pen pals with people in Pakistan because I was curious about it. I have this anthropological background. I'm curious about people and their lives. So it's like, okay, I'll go to, where does this music come from? It was really like there was this draw. And so I went there, went through major culture shock of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, because I was staying in people's homes and then you don't know the language. And there is this like, it's hard to like communicate your needs and wants or understand them. And you're like, I'm in it. And they live, and some of people live in joint family households where everybody lives kind of in the same place, but they all have their separate units based on family.
Yeah.
So I'm suddenly living with like, it's like 30 people. I'm like, oh, and
Yeah.
but the people were just so wonderful to me. I mean, it's just an amazing graciousness that people have for travelers. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
Being a good
and
host
so
is quite well, not that there are places, I mean, of course it's up and down, but there's some places that are really known, like you really need to be
yeah,
nice and take care of visitors.
yeah. I mean, but
Mm.
I think most decent travelers have that experience with many, local
Mhm.
people, so to speak, in many places. And so, and then I had friends that I'd made in Karachi. So they were up near Islamabad, the capital. And then I went down to Karachi because I was like, after about 10 days, I'm like, I got to go home because
Yeah.
it was like so much culture shock. And I get
Mhm.
to Karachi and I'm telling my friend, get me on the next plane because he was like, ah.
Yeah.
And then after, he started taking me on tours and stuff. And then I settled in, took me to a wedding. And then I was like, I don't want to go home. Like, this is really great. So after I got past the culture shock, and I went home a few weeks later. And then about a couple of years after that, I went and stayed several months and I taught English in a small village school that I met somebody through the internet who, this guy, he has his own story. And I taught English for a few months there in a very, very simple school, two schools
Mhm.
actually. And, spent time in that culture and in that world. In fact, I don't think until my end of my journey, at the very end, I didn't see a thing, and that's another story about Westerners and their interpretation of. I mean, meeting those people, they were Westerners there, and I'm like, oh my God, their attitudes are just like so shocking, But I spent all of my time there, and then came back to the States, and I'm working and living, and through that journey of finding spiritual self, I became Muslim. It's not
Mhm.
because I got married to a Muslim man. That came much, much later. Um,
Okay, so
but
you converted, so from a direct kind of a direct trajectory from your experience. So you fell in love with this music, went to Karachi, had that experience, and then converted to Islam, not
when I was
because you
stuck,
married into a Muslim man, but just because it just resonated with you.
and what's most interesting is that for me, one of the most telling moments of was my friend's sister, who was it was like her demonstration of her spiritual faith in this tribulation she was going through, but
Mhm.
it was like, where does this gentle spirit come from? Like, I'm like, wow, I want that, whatever it is. I mean, it was just this moment
Mhm.
watching her in prayer, and I thought, that's extra, like, you could feel something there. It's always like these moments of like, and I was like, okay, I want whatever she has.
Mhm.
But it was her. It wasn't like some guy and I could get married or I could be. It was really like this spiritual human connection of ourselves to our utter being, right?
Mhm.
And then, eventually I got back here and I eventually got married to my husband who's not from Pakistan. He's from South Africa.
Okay.
And I know that throw in the South African twist. Yes, there's
Yeah, I was also
Muslims
saying
there too.
that.
And so, so that's kind of the general background.
Okay, so interesting. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, we're our general our overall theme of this episode is why the West, in particular, in general, and Western feminists and media love to hate the Taliban, and particularly after October 7th. Not that this is the first time the Taliban has been used kind of as the face case or symbol of how different and backward or whatever uh, uh, the Islamic world is compared to the Western one, which is also a kind of an ideological category because there's a
Yeah.
lot of differences between countries in the quote unquote West, just like there's a lot of there's differences in the countries of the quote unquote Islamic dominated areas. In term, I'm not talking about I'm talking about domination in numbers, people. Um, anyway, so also another thing that Sarah and I have in common. I spent 2 years in Gaza, 2002 to 2004. I didn't convert to Islam, but it was quite education, as you can imagine, because when I first went there, I was, I knew a bit about the conflict, but I wouldn't say I was neutral, but I was like I knew the strength differences, obviously, um, but I didn't really know anything much at all about Zionism until I started to live there, and actually I think learned more about it perhaps in the last year than I had before. Um, but yeah, so I lived in Gaza. I worked in Gaza for 2 years. So lived and worked there. And there was a lot of holidays. So I worked at an international school, and so we had the Western holidays and the Islamic holidays. So we had a lot of holidays, and I spent a lot of time also, when possible, when the border was open, when the Erez border was open, which is between Gaza and Ashkelon, what's now called Ashkelon. Uh, and so when that border was open, my friends and I, my colleagues and I, because there was three of us who were single women altogether, so we would travel quite a bit about. So I also spent
Uh-huh.
quite a bit of time traveling in Israel and also other places in the Middle East. So
Mm.
I have that. I have that actual experience. Not that you actually have to be someplace to have, to have a logical and empathetic interpretation, but
Right,
it
right.
does. We do have that, yeah. So you had Pakistan. I had this. I also spent quite a few years in India, working, and quite a
Hmm.
few Muslim dominated areas. So I have a lot of I don't know why I wasn't setting out not to have a lot of Hindu contacts and friends, but for some reason, most of the people that I've maintained contact with and built
Hmm.
also a friendship in addition to a whether I'm doing research or whatever, were
Right.
Christian and Muslim Indians. I don't know why. Nothing against the Hindus, but that's just I do know some Hindus, but that was the thing.
But that's
Um,
like the perception of like, I mean, like when people are like in this, like, oh, the Muslims, and then they'll look at the Taliban, and
mm,
Saudi Arabia gets thrown in there, and a little like,
mhm,
and they have no idea
yeah.
the vast majority of Muslims don't even live there. Like they live in India,
Hmm.
Pakistan, and Indonesia.
Indonesia.
Like
Yeah.
their
Hmm.
perceptions are so like, and it's like, where do
Yeah.
you? It's like
Yeah.
nothing is based
Yeah.
in this
Yeah,
reality
and
that.
I wasn't confused. I didn't have to keep on reminding myself when I was in India or Jordan or Egypt or Turkey or Gaza, like which country I was in. Like, where am I? Oh, it's all the same. It's like, no, it's you know,
Mhm.
there's some differences, obviously. Um, Anyway, so another thing that we have in common is that Sarah and I are both we're both women who know that men can't be women, regardless of prefix. So we are whatever you want to call us, gender critical. I don't like that term. We think gender ideology and identity isn't just silly, but that it's harmful. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because one of the things that's been interesting, to use a um, yeah, yeah, been difficult, I guess, or upsetting, is that a lot of the people that we followed or that we were, kind of in sisterhood with over the our concerns about gender identity and what it means to um, pretend that woman is a mixed group, a mixed sex category that men can identify in and out of. A lot of these women, very intelligent, and not just women, but we'll focus on the women. Um, you know, when October 7th happened, all of a sudden it wasn't just the silence; it was just they sounded like they were IDF spokespeople,
Oh
and
yeah.
just so what was that like for you when you realized that the lot of the people that you followed and in terms of their takes, whether it be activism or analysis of gender identity ideology and the political problems of that, when they started to sound like Netanyahu? Do you remember any of that?
Um, yeah, I mean, when I would observe some people, um, in a way, it was some disappointment. Like we haven't really gone any further than we have. Like I'm like, what century are you people living in? Because it's like the world is like you haven't gotten past it. Where yeah, there's some differences, but we're all the same. We all want to live and eat and feed our families. Like this is like but it's like okay, this hasn't gone anywhere.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I was more I was, and then it just started getting annoying. It's just you're like you just realize how stupid people are because on the one hand they want to build this, and I'm like you people are shooting yourselves in the foot because on one hand you want this. Like when I saw the march in Canada last year, where everybody was coming together against the gender ideology in schools, and the Muslims were everybody was there. Like we don't want this on our kids. It was like, oh wow, the movement is coming, and then this happens, and then they start attacking all the, um, you know, Islam or Muslims or whatever, and it's like, oh, you just wiped out your entire movement because you will no longer get these women because if you're making me choose between my family, my husband, my son, they're Muslim. I mean,
Hmm.
my in-laws are all Muslim, wonderful
Hmm.
people, and it's like on a basic human level, you're going to lose. Like you're not thinking that well, not even having the brains to say I'm just going to shut up about the subject. Like I'm going to stick to my issue and like whatever
Hmm.
my other beliefs are because we want to have a movement. We want Muslim. I'm like, would I want to go up to KJK's little speaker thing and speak? And if I wear a full hijab, like, do I want to go to that? Let women speak when the only thing you ever think about is that we're terribly oppressed, or you call out, oh, what about conservative Jewish or Muslim women who want to? That's the only time you even notice, and it's
Hmm.
like, it's you just shot a you just shot the
Hmm.
whole movement in the foot by opening your mouth instead of like going, this is a separate issue. And granted, KJK went into politics, so it's a little bit different, I'm sure.
Hmm.
But for a lot of people, it's like, you want me to join you? I'm not going to join you now. I mean, I saw that
Hmm.
happen here in the States where there's some of the gender stuff in schools, and the Muslims are very opposed to just teach my kid English and math. I don't
Yeah,
want
leave
them to learn
the
about these stuff. Right.
yeah.
And but then you'll have like Moms of Liberty coming in, and they're very distrustful of people like the Moms of Liberty, and now we know why, because
Yeah.
most of those people are like, we hate you.
Hmm.
We think you're these terrible human beings, and that's
Hmm.
underneath it all, and then so they know that, so they're not going to work with you, and so it's like we're never going
Hmm.
to get anywhere as long as you can't see that all of humanity versus the people running the show. Like if you can't
Hmm.
join with us then and see us as humans,
Hmm.
you're in trouble. You're because you are outnumbered. You are simply outnumbered. It's just like I laugh. I'm going, there are 2 billion Muslims. Are you dumb? Like
Yeah.
I mean, and Russia's passing laws against stuff. China is. And it's like the world is with you, but if you go bashing them, they're going to say, screw you. We're just not going to help you, and you're going to drown
Hmm.
in your own stuff. That's what you're going to do because
Hmm.
you can't live with people. You're so
Hmm.
hostile to other people.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's that. You got to pick and to me, yes, the gender is an issue, but it's like, no, that's a small issue in the big pound of potato. Like, what we really are coping with is World War III, and
Mm-hmm.
death bombings is way more of a bigger issue
Mm-hmm.
than, okay, some dude in a dress. Like, you know what? You know,
Yeah.
we that's where then I like most people switch focus if you have a human thing of going, wow, we may be blown up soon. We have got to get this. We've got to speak
Mm-hmm.
up on this. We cannot let World War III happen. If we can, I like forget you won't have a bathroom to protest as long you know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I'm like. If you don't stop your government, you are from sending these people like inciting them to continue on or encouraging them, you may not exist. And they're just like, well, men can't be women. Well, yes, well,
Mhm.
but and then, well, it's
Like, yes,
the
of course. And you know
it's,
who agrees with you? Most all the Muslims. They're
well,
not
just even
confused. They're not confused about how many sexes there are in general. I mean, I'm sure there are a
or just
few, but
I mean,
as a rule.
I mean, I'm sure everybody in the world just, I mean, the like kind of rolls their eyes like this is so stupid, and then they go, it originates from the West. It comes in from the money making powers, as Jennifer Billick so aptly, explains, and it's like, well, and then the Western feminists are like, well, I'll give you a perfect example of Western feminism or women's rights in action. When I was in Pakistan, and at the end of my trip there, I went and met some people that a friend of mine had met and work in Afghanistan, and they were Westerners. So I go and I stay with them for a day or two. And so I'm talking to these people, Tara, and the woman's like, we started a battered women's shelter. And I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
But none of the women are coming. I'm like, duh. And I'm like, did you even think to know what this culture is to going? Did you ever seek to like talk to actual people on the ground about what may work? Because you're telling a woman, because they don't have a economic systems to support women who leave their husbands per se. They don't have social
Mhm.
services to the degree we do, first of
Mhm.
all. Second of all, everything has happened. The families work to negotiate and fix things. That's how it
Yeah.
works. If you have a
Yeah.
good family, life is good. If you have a bad family, it sucks. That's the same here. It's the same everywhere in the world. I don't,
Mhm.
you can't. And I'm just sitting there going, what are you doing?
Mhm.
You don't even speak the language. What are you doing here? Leave these people alone. They'll fix it themselves. But
Mhm.
I was just sitting there going, this is the importation of our ideas into you that people
Mhm.
they're like tired of it. Like going, I'm not a child.
Mhm.
I can do this without you telling me or telling
Mhm.
me as a woman what I need and want, that I'm brainwashed or whatever. People aren't going to take it. It's like they're not
No,
going to
no.
take that. And I'm sure you
Mhm.
experienced in Gaza and other places. There are some. I mean, this perception of these docile women isn't
Oh, there's some
like,
badass ladies, let me tell you.
oh,
Oh
the
my God.
and in the
Ah.
household, the families I stayed in,
Yeah.
those women ruled those inside the mother, because in Islam the mother is the most important person. Like they have this like patriarch. No. You must. The mother is like you. Your mother is higher than father. Like in the family unit, she is the one you project.
Interpersonal relations and yeah, yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah,
is. And it's
yeah.
like they ruled. They're
Mhm.
running their little kingdoms in
What
there.
is true, and I think this is what used to be. This is, I mean, I'll just speak to what my understanding of because I also was born and raised in the United States before I became I didn't mean to travel around and never come back. It just kind of happened that way. I come back to visit, but it wasn't like I was like, I'm out of here. I was like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
gonna go around for a while, and then I'm like, oh, okay. You meet someone, you get married. Anyway, um, I married a Dutch dude. Let's see. Who I met in Gaza. That's another story. I think this is really important. And that of course, and I want to pick on what you said about how the family, and not just like the immediate family, but like
mhm,
the extended family. And I saw this in Gaza, but also in India and other places, that if there's a problem, that what I would be used to, like if I was having a problem with my husband, it would be between
yeah,
me and him, and only if I shared it with somebody. But
Yeah.
there it'd be like there's like a massive effort, and not always,
Yes.
everybody's getting involved to figure it out, to try to maintain the unit, to try to fit, whatever it is. And if it's between different families, then yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know what you would call it, just like privately handled or socially handled within within the
But rather
family,
than the
family,
courts,
and
it's
the
done
thing.
here. It's like a
Yeah,
different. It's like
yeah.
it's
And
just
but which is fine, but like when you said, then it's kind of the luck of the draw. If you have a father or a husband, or if your husband dies and your son who wants to be a dick,
yeah.
and if there's nobody, if you happen to be in a place where there isn't somebody who can like go and put it and deal with it how they do it, like be less of a dick, or however it's handled
Right.
there, because newsflash, most people in the world don't like seeing their moms or sisters um abused,
Right.
so there's dynamics going on. However, of course, if the state, so you have the Taliban, if you have a larger culture, or the religious culture, and the state that women don't have recourse to, then of course that's true, you know.
I mean, it, I mean, but
And
it's
but it used to be that way, and it still is to a certain extent where we come from. It used to be that the women didn't have recourse to the law and the state, um, if they were in a bad situation with their father or their husband, or if they were widowed and then they were had to be on some other male family members
I mean,
um,
it's
care.
it's sort of similar. It's sort of the probably because I'm in mental health, and you see people who are stuck in situations because they don't have recourse, and it's usually universally, not often, tied to economic resources.
Mm,
Because if Rihanna gets beat up, she can get a plane out,
yeah.
right? And
Mhm,
it's true. Like there are plenty of women. I mean, they're getting murdered here. They're murdered all over the world, and
mhm.
they have no recourse. But this idea that what they want to do, and even in that picture you have here, just take off the head thing, and it'll make them feel better,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, no, because we're dealing with the issues of extreme poverty and men. I mean, think about this. This country, these poor people have been from Russia to the US, have been at war for decades because
Mhm,
they were invaded. How many of
mhm.
these people have PTSD? We're
That's a
not
good,
thinking
yeah.
about what the
Mhm.
mental health of these people are. I mean, when you deal with people who are triggered all the time, guess what happens? But we're not thinking about the mental health of what they've experienced by the systems that we imported to these people.
Yeah.
It's like we didn't
Mhm,
they didn't ask for a war. These
mhm,
people, these women didn't ask to have their lives blown up to live in rubble. I mean, they
mhm.
lived in many small places. You've been in very rural areas. There's not a lot there for people. And
No.
then we're going to, like what they're doing to Gaza. Well, there's rubble. We're going to blow it up even more. Aren't you
Mhm.
just proud of yourselves? We're going to
Yeah.
destroy humans' lives, their livelihoods. We're making it unlivable. Oh, but they wear a scarf. What is their problem?
Yeah. Well, and I think, and we might get into this towards the end, depending on what how what our energy is, and because
Yeah,
both Sarah and I have kids, and you never know when they'll decide that they're not going to let you podcast. Um, but I think that in terms of the kind of unconscious or the psychoanalytical
yes,
issues that the West has, not just with the Taliban but with the women, as I don't think they would they're not aware of this, or when or it's not something they would acknowledge or even be aware of, but that they have issue with these women for not acting how they think, for not acting how they should, how they want them to act, and choosing what they want them to choose.
right.
So I think it's easy to put it off all on the Taliban. Of course, I'm not saying the Taliban's great. I'm no fan of any Taliban policy vis-a-vis women. Okay. Just, but I'm also not in Afghanistan. I'm not an Afghanistan woman. So, but I am an American, and I can say, okay, maybe I should, what I can do is voice my opinion and work with others who can say, can you stop causing all these problems? Stop bombing and sanctioning and doing all this crap. But I think there's a psychological thing there that it's like
Yeah.
they really want to quote unquote free these women. So to the extent that these women seem to acquiesce, seem to deal with these burqas and whatnot, it really thwarts the desire of the West to liberate them. So I think that
Mhm.
some way in the kind of unconscious, subconscious, they become also a target of negative emotion. Yeah,
Mhm.
like why do these women take it? You know, because it also, I think, in a way, it kind of like, but I don't want. I'm sorry. We'll put a pin in that. But stay tuned, people, when we get to our psychoanalysis, when we put the West and Western feminists and media on the couch and be like, what's going on here? Why are the Taliban and Afghan women such an object of desire for you, or a kind of a mix of love and hate, disgust and
Oh, and then we're told that
interest?
we're the Taliban loving, or we're condoning it, and it's
Mhm.
like,
Huh. No.
and and that's what they always kind of come back to,
Mhm.
versus,
Mhm.
understanding that there are many. Because the funny thing is, some of those women are happy that
Yeah.
they're doing this. So it's this that even freaks them out even more, because even in
Oh, no, no,
Pakistan,
Sarah, you know what that is then? They've internalized the Taliban male supremacy.
or it's
Yeah?
Islam,
Or it's
and
Islam, yeah.
then
They've
but
internalized it, which we have to get them out of that and re-educate and let them not, so that they are able to make the right choices for themselves.
right, and so
Again,
it's
I'm not saying this is
very
what they think. I'm just saying this is my interpretation of how
right,
the excessive attention and emotion that gets directed one way or another at these groups.
right.
But I should say, just for both Sarah and I, that we want to focus as much as possible on the West's treatment, how they, what I this is my title, not Sarah's, love to hate the Taliban, and in particular when you given what's going on in Israel Palestine, almost for a year now, but of course it's been going on a lot longer, but blown up literally uh, the last year. But we want to say is that we're not trying to downplay the issues that women face in Afghanistan or by the Taliban, and it's a serious issue. But we want to ask, why does the Western kind of feminist gaze, for lack of a better word, on certain forms of a certain on certain women, on certain perpetrators, while ignoring others? And that this is
It,
tell us something interesting about Western imperialism, cultural chauvinism, and also the psyche, this fears and desires, and why won't these women help them? Who knows, all kinds of interesting, I think,
I think that's a
things
really
going
good
on.
point of why um, there is a backlash of reaction by many people in other cultures when you come to quote save us, and yet you are dismissing important parts of who I am, like saying, well, we want to liberate you and your religion is evil. Well,
Mhm.
how, that's like when you go to, like, if let's say you theoretically think all of these women are abused, like if you want to take that thing and, okay, it's like when you're an abusive, like even as a therapist, or and you're dealing with an abusive person who's being abused. If you attack their abuser as like they're awful, but well, guess what? It naturally comes up is a defense mechanism.
Mhm.
Even their theoretical, even if I agree on certain whatever, their methodology is really one of the big issues. It's like, and there's no accountability to the fact that we, the United States, put the Taliban in. We were the ones when we were fighting Russia. We created the Taliban, and then there's no accountability within, you know, our responsibility. When I was in college, and I went to a talk by a woman from India, she was talking about the bride burnings, the men who
Mhm.
set their wives on fire. And I asked her, what can we do? And she said, fix your government. And I said, okay. Like that's what she was
Mhm.
like. We'll fix ourselves. We're capable. You
Mhm.
fix what your government is doing, and
Mhm.
that's kind of like when these women are like, "Oh, the evil Taliban," and you're like, "Oh God!" And I just roll my eyes like, "Oh well, you're just useless. You are
Mhm.
completely useless, and go away."
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
aren't there, and even and
Mhm.
some woman out in the middle of wherever in UK or US, these people don't care what you think. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
even on the internet. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
spouting
know.
off ideas,
Oh,
and I'm like,
yeah. Yeah.
uh,
But I wanted before we get to that, I wanted since we brought up the past here, this is a photo, I think this is in the early 70s of women, Afghan women, probably in
huh.
Kabul, at university. And then here's a picture of what we tend to how we tend to the symbol of Afghanistan women that's been burned into the kind of the Western
Oh yes, oh yes.
psyche there. And I just want to quickly, for people who don't know, is to say that the Taliban hasn't always been in power, or regimes like the Taliban. And I'm not going to go. I'm not an expert in um, Afghan history, but I just want to go through from the early 1900s to present. So this guy's name was King Amnullah Khan, and this is a very potted history focusing on women's rights, or women, or reforms in terms of the relations between the women and men, and also, but particularly um, women in public and whatnot. So he instituted some first wave of reforms. And here's a picture of him and his family. And what do you notice about these ladies, Sarah?
Um,
We
I
can
don't
see
know.
their faces, they're not veiled.
Um, yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, I guess so. Then I see,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, but yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So this is the idea that just so yeah, so here's the that back, this might have been probably the turn, I don't know, 1910, 1920, something like that. Um maybe 30s. So here's the king. This is the royal family of the, well, at least yeah. So the mom and the daughters and grandkids, and they're not veiled, hanging out. And again, this is of course the royal family, but the idea that obviously the it sends a signal. Um, Also, Muhammad Zahir Shah, to the night in the night and to the, I think, the 1960s and progress and tension. Sorry, but he was. This is not. He wasn't. He was in the. I think came to rule in the 40s. Um, and here's a picture of him, and you see his wife to the far right, and also she's. You can see that that's Western, even in Western dress, I guess, and she's not veiled. Um, and then also, so then there was of course, I'm skipping over lots about the women. So there's sorry. Sorry, I forgot I had notes.
The
That's why I
two
was
minute no,
thinking, like, why I forgot that I had notes. And like I got caught up in the pictures here. So
it's a 2 minute history. How do you put a whole country's history in?
yeah.
You know, it's all
Um
right.
okay, so during Amnullah's reign, in the early 20th century, he came to power in 1919, and he wanted to, quote unquote, modernize Afghanistan and push the country into the 20th century, so to speak. And apparently, he took inspiration from Mustafa Kemal Ataturk in Turkey, and wanted to take moves to secularize Afghan society. So during his reign, girls' schools were established. So Afghan girls were to receive formal education for the first time. He encouraged women to appear in public unveiled with his own wife, Queen Soraya Tarzi. Might be saying that name wrong. Setting an example by not wearing the veil in public. He tried to implement marriage reforms aimed at restricting polygamy and outlawing child marriages. Um, but just of course, this not everybody was excited about those reforms. So there was there was pushbacks, particularly in the more tribal areas in the mountains of Afghanistan. That it fast forward to when the U.S. Invaded Afghanistan, we heard about, if you're following this, that the Taliban kind of what would you call it, retreated, but into the Kandahar region, so the mountains and all that stuff, the more quite rural, uh, even maybe pastoral areas. So there was backlash with the tribal chiefs, and so yeah, and it says here that this, I don't know how much of this is true, but what I found is that this contributed wasn't the only reason that contributed to hit the end of his reign, but it was one of the issues that caused him to abdicate the throne. Um, and so then this guy, this man, so Muhammad Zahir, he also um, so he took the throne in 1933 and ruled for 4 decades. So it was under his reign that Afghanistan saw a second wave of modernization, particularly in the 50s and 60s, which included women's rights reforms. So apparently in 1964, Afghanistan, under his rule, adopted a new constitution that granted universal suffrage, giving women the right to vote and run for office. So this was a huge leap forward, particularly in urban areas. In urban areas, women began attending university, taking jobs, and even holding some lower level political offices. But of course, the progress was uneven. So it's just like this could be, I'm sure, if we took any country, obviously with differences, um, you're going to have one step forward, 2 steps back. There's give and take when you're changing when it comes to women's rights. There's a divide between the urban areas and the rural areas. There's religious differences and all this type of thing. So he was trying to push this through, but not everybody was excited about it. There was uneven uptick. Um, so in the countryside and Kandahar and whatnot, many women were still expected to follow traditional gender roles, and the strict purdah, which I guess is the Pashtun word for gender segregation, and limited access to education or public life. Um, so there's been tensions going back at least 100 or more years that there's a record of. So again, here's the king. His wife looks, Western or Afghan Western. I don't know what the term is. um, Quickly, then there's communist rule, Soviet invasion, the Mujahideen, which is between 1978 and 1989. And again, you see here's a lady on the left. I think it was a looks more rural traditional dress, but they were also on the Communist Party side. And then you have the picture on the right of women. Looks like mostly women, but also some men who are on the Communist Party side. And I believe this is started in 1978, the Saur Revolution, Saur. I'm not sure how to say it. But anyway, the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, a communist party, overthrew the government and seized power. And this ushered also another decade of radical change. It introduced compulsory education for girls, so it wasn't just available. They remade it compulsory education for girls. They sought to outlaw child marriage and forced marriages, and were encouraging women to to work, join the armed forces, because obviously they joined the armed forces and whatnot. But so this is probably where most of us watching now probably can remember hearing something, unless we're too young, or about Afghanistan. So the Communist Party government, what did they call them again? The People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan came to power. They overthrew the government, came to power, started issuing reforms. And then this is where it gets quite imperialist. So you have the Russians coming in to support the new government, and then you have the West wanting to thwart this, for the Communist Party taking hold, or I guess consolidating power in Afghanistan. And so they start supporting the Mujahideen, which was like pre-Taliban, if I get that right. So so the Mujahideen is kind of is my understanding, is like a general term. There was a lot of tribal, there was a lot of kind of warlords and tribal groups that were opposed to the communist regime. And so the West, the United States, helped fund them and arm them so they could defeat. Basically, it became a proxy war, is my understanding, during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and United States, uh, on supporting different sides in Afghanistan. So we know how that went. The regime fell, and here's another picture of Mujahideen from the 1970s, early 80s. The regime fell, and then the Taliban. And so, sorry, I should say that the regime fell, and then I believe, sorry, where is it at? There was a period of like civil war, basically. So the communist regime or party fell. The Soviet Union withdraws. The U.S. loses interest because their goal was to not to deny, I guess, the Soviet Union another friendly regime in Afghanistan. And so then the groups that were fighting the Communist Party and the Soviet Union started to fight themselves over who was going to take control of the country, and the Taliban won out. So this is their first stage of rule. So this is a picture of them from the 1996, I think. And then we know what happened. They, of course, this was not a good period for women's rights. So from the start of the war through till now, the position of women's, the reforms that started all the way back in the turn of the century have been undone. And so now we have today's Taliban, which just came to power in 2021 after the U.S. Finally gave up and left Afghanistan. And so quickly, during this time, of course, my understanding is that within the quote unquote green zone, so Kabul and the green zone within Kabul, maybe some other more urban areas, the position of in terms of women's rights greatly improved within particular areas, but in the rural and mountainous areas where the Taliban and other types of groups like this were in control, it got very oppressive, relatively speaking. And you see the burqas and all the stuff, and the not hearing things about them banning women, girls from going to school, and the child marriages and the forced marriages and all that kind of thing. The U.S. leaves. The Taliban takes over the whole country. Well, they come to power, so it's the Taliban regime, and they start quickly. If I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, at first there was some overtures, some statements, at least coming out of the propaganda wing of the government, saying that they weren't going to be so harsh. Yeah, that maybe there was some hope that they wouldn't ban girls from going to school, or that type of thing, but that has gone away. So I've been going on for a while, just a very brief potted history of women's rights in Afghanistan since the 1920s, and we've seen them go. There seemed to be steady progress, although there was resistance, but it was going in the kind of the general direction that we've seen in other areas of the world. But then it really went downhill when the U.S. Soviet Union proxy war took shape in Afghanistan. So, Sarah, do you want to add anything to this potted history of women's rights in Afghanistan the last 100 years?
I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the
No, me either.
on Afghanistan. What I was reading something that made me think about how this press really works, and somebody was pointing out that it's interesting how, like, they were talking, it was about Korea, and how so many millions of, like, hundreds of thousands of Koreans died in the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
All of this happened, we got North Korea, and how all of the news about North Korea became hostile. Like, they are now our enemy. We are going to make them look like the worst place in the world. That's what happens by Western media. And they do that for all our enemies. Like, everybody's lives are horrible. So I don't really know. But I also wonder, it makes me think about that. No, very few people know that there are many different ethnic tribes in Pakistan. And so what may be happening in one region may not actually be happening in another. And it's just, I just get into all this starts coming out now. Like, oh, it just, like there's all these, how we're being played. And so it's not that it's not saying that there are not concerns. My God, yes, of course, people should be allowed to go to school. It's not any sort of Islamic thing. This is just
Sarah and I are not pro the Taliban's views on women.
And it's
No. For what
it
it's worth.
becomes the it gets fed. Like I was watching some guy and he's like, for human rights, and every picture is about Afghani women. I'm like, what? Like, it's like, because they don't really talk about what's the average lifespan in Afghanistan? Probably very low. I don't know it, but I suspect. So people marry young. When I was in Pakistan, and this is unusual, they don't marry this young, but there was two teenagers that were being married. That's what you did because you lived to 40. And it's like, so the quality of life is so short, and this is what people do. And of course and then we're like, well, of course no one should be forced to marry. Yes, no, I mean, it's like, but there's child marriages in all over the world, but it's these people, like the evil Taliban is the persona, and they're the worst have ever existed. And it's like, really? Meanwhile, we've just killed 40,000 to 150,000 people, right? We're supporting this. Like, I'm going, what? So but it's that always that port, like, why now? Why did this become a focal point right now? And then all of it starts coming out as we're doing this in Gaza. And you go, what is really happening in Afghanistan? None of us are there. We don't know. Like, you've lived in Gaza, and I'm sure that when you think about how people portray Palestinians, and you're like, these people they don't shit.
They don't know anything. No,
they don't know anything. And so then I always, it's like, well, suddenly now because it's that image gets people riled up, and that ties into your psychological thing that you're talking about of what it is about this image is, for
so titillating for us.
It is titillating and
unconsciously titillating.
Because and then it becomes about, and they're not just saying, oh, it's about Afghanistan and the Taliban. It's then spread out to all Muslims, Islam, and we're all sex slaves. And it's like, where does this come into play? Because
it has to be the added juice, So it's like if there's if something's an honor killing, it's like, oh, these honor killings are going on. They're going on now in Sweden. Honor killings, like, well,
men kill women all the time.
And again, it's like, well, okay, honor killings, okay, fine, but what? So if an upset boyfriend or husband kills his wife and he's not Muslim, we just say, okay, it was a crime of passion or it was, a murder. But if it's Muslims involved, then it becomes like an honor killing, and it's this whole other, patina, this veil, if you will, of intrigue and like, otherness, like, ooh, it's an honor killing.
I mean, some people get it because, they get it that it's
right.
a male story. It's a violence issue that is universal. Like, you had that case going on in France. So that guy who pimped out his wife unconscious to everybody. And you go, and that's France. This is the civilization world. And you're like, oh, how better is that than any, And so you get this perception that they drive into you. But there is something about that just really strikes people,
grips them
so much. And I think it also, what you say, it feeds into what the narrative they want, which I'm sure you have other things to talk about, what's really going on, that this feeds that desire that they're looking for the otherness of people and how bad they are and how it reflects
how good we are,
the goodness we are, you
Well,
know.
yeah, I mean, if you're somebody who for either really believes or is cynically using kind of the civilizational discourse that it's a battle of civilizations and the West is under attack and we have to protect the West and there's these invading things and this and that and the other. And then of course the symbol of the Taliban and these women is very potent for that. See, look at this. You want this? This is what you want? This is and the people who
Mhm.
try to have a nuanced, reasonable discussion like, oh, look, you're okay with them, or these are your friends, or it's just so gets so high school. It's like, Jesus, people. But here's an Open Society Foundation, and this was a thing that said Afghanistan's Taliban face new international pressure on rights of women. And it says, we welcome the announcement from the foreign minister of Germany, Australia, Canada, and the Netherlands that they will start a legal effort to call the Taliban regime to account for ongoing abuses of the rights of Afghan women and girls. So when I saw this, I thought, okay, fine. But I'm like, so this is interesting because Germany, Australia, Canada, and the Netherlands also, quote unquote, their governments stand with Israel unequivocally. Have said peep about their ongoing abuses of the rights of Palestinian women and girls and now Lebanese women and girls. Um, Not that men and boys aren't also important, but we're focusing on the hypocrisy and the kind of libidinal economy of Western feminists, for lack of a better word. Um, and so that's one thing. And in terms of the hypocrisy, like Germany, Australia, Canada, and the Netherlands also are terrible when it comes to the gender issue. They
Oh
have
yeah,
no problem erasing women as a autonomous category of person through this
100%.
nebulous term gender identity that
Right.
basically, in effect, means that women is a co-ed category.
I know. It's
And
so
all that
ironic.
stuff that means, all these countries do that. So not that's the same thing as I'm not saying that's equivalent to not being able to go to school or to have to all this stuff. But I'm just saying there's these interesting things that if we focus on the Taliban somehow makes it, allowed to kind of marginalize that issue. So not to mention how they are with that. So I'm like, well, okay. And then you must, because given that you follow this as well, I just think it's so fun. I'm thinking like if I try to put myself to do some Verstehen, put my anthropological imagination on. And I think if I was the Taliban, I wouldn't give two shits what any international community thinks about what we do. I would laugh at this. Be like, oh, okay.
I
It's
mean,
like you're
they.
okay with them, it's such the hypocrisy. It's like
Okay.
there's one rule for the top dogs and their friends, and there's another rule for everybody else. So
Well,
okay.
and then the humor. I mean, it's sort of ironic that they fought a war to get rid of Russia and then us. These people are tough as shit. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't argue
Yeah.
that these. You
Yeah.
look at the picture you had with them in the truck; they're in freaking sandals. It
Yeah.
gets cold in Afghanistan. Like these people are, and
They
they're
went to the
malnourished.
they went to the mountains and the rural area for 20 years, and
That's where they're from.
as soon as the West was like, "Okay, we're done," boop, boop, boop. Who's still there? Who's the only group that has the numbers and the organization to take over when the West left Kabul is the Taliban.
I mean,
And now they're gonna tell them did they think they give a shit what these organizations think?
and the truth is,
I
like,
mean,
look
it's
at
funny, and then I wonder, like, who is this for?
themselves to
We're
kind
gonna
of
tell
keep
the
it in the news.
Taliban what we think about their pernicious issues. I'm like, yeah, I agree. I don't like their edicts on women either. But if I was them, I'd be like, here's one finger and here's another.
I mean, look at it like when they would go after. I mean, their perception of these women are all over in the Islamic world. They're oppressed, even though in many countries the rates of women in science and math in Muslim countries are higher than Western countries. It's really like, are you people kidding me? But when they would go on about Saudi Arabia because women couldn't drive, like this was their big thing, even though the average Saudi woman has their own chauffeur. Like, this is hilarious, right? And there was always that pressure. You think the Saudi government gave a rat's ass? They changed it when things inside their country changed, and now women can drive. Now they have no complaints. Like, oh no, now the women, but oh God, there's the veil, even though the face covering is pretty optional, and it's like, oh God, like it's just this. There's just no sense of like idea that other people really do view their, and maybe that's where they get into the Western view versus as quote Eastern view or Islamic view, but like the idea of privacy and the
modesty.
Modesty for both men and women. My husband's not going to go out naked in front of anybody. He's not going to wear shorts. He's never worn shorts. It's just like you just generally don't do that. You dress, when you look in all these countries, the men wear the same freaking long dress, pants, and the shirt, the long tunic that women wear. It's just not pretty. And the women cover their head, but the men wear.
Yeah, it's like a sheet. It looks like a bed sheet. It's like what? But it's hot. So
and it's about your public and inner selves are different, and it's like, and there's something like, it's like when you start to think about some of the things, like, well, yeah, it's kind of like nice to be like, I don't want to look at your junk. I don't want to look at you. I want to just to do that in your own home. It has a nice ring to it at times where it's like, okay, we're different. We don't have that value, and maybe we did long ago, but there isn't as much of that in the West as people hang out everything. Like, what are they doing? Okay, fine, do what you want. But
it also becomes almost desexualized. It loses its appeal, its aura, if you're seeing it all the time.
And then if you point out something like, oh, you're like, okay, so the average age of marriage is younger, probably in these countries, early 20s. Because people, that's the prime breeding age in a way. Like, having children if you're younger is easier physically. And
it also depends. If you're in rural areas, you need the labor. Yeah, so it's
and or just they value family. They do. But on a cultural level, children are very valued generally in these cultures. Like, it's like children are from God, and so. But here they'll be like, oh, child marriage, even though it's like, okay, they do that all over the world. But if you point out, well, we have people in the West, they're 13, 14-year-olds are on birth control. Well, they're like, it's
freedom.
the choice, but that's freedom. And you're just like, okay, it's just like, there's no, like, if you point out anything that makes things somewhat universal, when you dig past the surface, they can't cope with it because that requires self-reflection, like, oh, female genital mutilation, even though it's not Islamic. And then it's and some Muslims and certain regions do it. But then if you point out, like, I forget which regions in Africa, it's very strong, that the Christian people do it too. They go, they can't cope. It's like, it's cultural.
Well, and also the idea that not everybody is of the same mind when it comes to that issue. So you could ask them, like, well, do you think everybody is on the same page when it comes to that issue? And of course, you have to know somebody. You just can't walk up to a stranger and be like, "Hey, so what's your views on?" You have to have a rapport to figure out. Do some do some anthropological work for a bit to be able to figure out what's going on. And also, if we look at historically, it's like, regardless of cultural differences, when you have relative stability and peace and rule of law and not impoverished, then women tend to get married later. These things that you don't like decrease. They don't go totally away, but they decrease.
Of course, it's so like,
so this idea that it's all this religion, a particular, or a particular cultural thing. It's like, okay, well, that's it's very reductive.
Well, and like you're
but it's more fun. Apparently, it's more satisfactory to focus on the heart of darkness that is Afghanistan than
right. And
to look at the more practical issues that actually make a difference universally when it comes to women and girls.
And you know, I mean, you've done enough
And they can make their
international,
own
you know,
decisions. They're not kids.
that,
They may not, this idea that anything conservative means that someone's being denied a choice, that someone couldn't choose or maybe maybe not freely choose, but because we're not just little atoms, but that people couldn't decide to willingly uh, go along and embrace their culture for whatever reason, that somehow that's always by definition an index of oppression is also a fantasy, I think.
well, and as you know, because you've dealt
It
with
could
enough
be, but not
women,
for everybody. This
you know,
idea
and
that
you,
how that anybody that either they're oppressed. So when it comes for and I'm going to stereotype the West and Western feminists when vis-a-vis, Taliban
uh-huh,
women, but MENA more generally, it's like either
yeah,
they're oppressed or they've
uh-huh,
internalized
right,
they're internalized the patriarchy, the misogyny of their religion or their culture. It's like, wasn't
oh
that
yeah,
nice?
mm-hmm.
But not
Like
us.
yeah, so
We are amazing. We don't internalize anything.
we
So
have
if you agree with
never.
me, Sarah, if you agree with me, then you're liberated, you're enlightened, and you have not you don't have any internalized patriarchy or anything else.
Oh
But if
no,
you
but I
don't,
have.
then you are either something else.
You know, and then it's interesting when they're talking about the lack of men who can take responsibility, take care of families, blah blah blah, and the loss of, in a way, the the family unit, to where, where people now are just so individuals that you don't think of, quote, the collective, but on the other hand, families are a collective, and so
Mhm.
they're all. But then, you know, there's a woman who, I'll send you her information. She was on Tammy Peterson's show. She's a British woman who did research on British women who are converting to Islam,
Mhm.
and it really interesting research. She's a Muslim woman, but it's well, what are people finding they're missing? And then they go, oh, I'm finding what I want, which is certain qualities that come across more in like family responsibility. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
you can't just go
structure,
build.
meaning, purpose, direction.
Right. And
Yeah,
and this, because if you point
something
out, like,
transcendent beyond consumerism and immediate gratification. Yeah.
and I think, like even if I tell someone that I work, I've worked all my life, so that's not an issue. If I tell them my husband is obligated religiously to not only care for me, but his female relatives,
Mm,
that he has that responsibility on him that I don't have. I don't
mhm,
have. I can make my money. I don't have to spend it on family. It's mine. Whereas
mhm.
he is obligated to care for his mother, his sisters, etc. And so it's like we're not all, anyone in society is, it's acknowledging burdens, and they make it structured so it's organized. Like, and my sister was talking. She was in the Peace Corps in the Pacific Islands years ago, and she was talking and about their way they operate their society. And these are, that's why anthropology is good, because it's these smaller systems. But their way of operating, it was so fascinating to her. She said that it's, you get more brownie points in society by the more gifts you give. So everybody
Mm,
sits and gives each other gifts. And
mhm.
it's like, and it works, because then everybody's gift giving, and they're all, no one, and it's like, well, they've managed their society, but no one's screaming at them that the women, like nobody
Mhm.
cares about it. It's these Afghan women, this somehow. And keep in mind, all of these people, as I know, how much money there is in these NGOs,
Oh,
and
yeah.
this, we're going to get all the money, because that's, I mean,
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah, the
different
worst possible
world.
thing for these NGOs and these do-gooders and whatnot would be it would be if all of a sudden all the Afghan women got up yesterday and like tore off their veils and like, okay, we're done, and they'd be like, what?
right. I mean,
They
and
feel,
even if
and then they'd be probably confused, like, why do I feel I'm glad, but I'm also sad? Why is
and
that?
then it'll be like, okay, so say Taliban says, okay, we're going to let girls go to school and they don't have to wear the burqa. Okay. Meanwhile, there's still a shitload of mess problems, like
Yeah,
in terms of poverty, in terms of
yeah,
what
yeah.
traumatization these people. I mean, they have
Hmm.
generations who have not known war. I go, that's gonna freak your brain out, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, I treat people with PTSD. It's no joke, and it's like, oh my god, the whole country's got PTSD probably, and
Mm,
so there's not that concern for their well-being. It's
mm,
just men and this. It's always in this
mm,
filter, and you go, well, that's
mm,
why I couldn't be claimed to be a feminist, because I can't look at the world through just that filter. That's what
mm,
feminism does. Is it looks everything through that lens, and I just
mhm,
don't think, like, you look at like what's going on in the world. If you just look at that lens, you don't see what we're, like, we're on World War III.
mhm,
This is ridiculous. What,
mhm.
and they get, if you're always in
Mhm.
that lens, you will find
Well,
what
and
you're looking
I
for.
think there's I think there's maybe one of the things that just to I'm probably to fast forward a bit, but when we talk about the psychoanalytical aspect of this, the more unconscious
Hmm.
anxieties and desires is that oh no, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, yeah. So I think one of the things, so not the actual, so let's just take the image that Western feminists and Westerners tend to have of the Taliban and Afghan women. And so what this shows is that, you still have this, so you have this level of patriarchy or misogyny, whatever you want to call it, in the world. But what it reminds these women of is that if enough men decide that you're not equal, guess what, honeys? You're not equal. The men are
Ah,
still going to be 32% stronger. Yeah, most of the army and all all this stuff. So for our existence, um, the main protection of women from other men was men. Yeah, their
well,
family members or whatever, and all this stuff. And if enough men decide that they don't agree that you should have these equal rights, guess what,
mhm.
honey? You don't have them.
That
And
is
that's
such an
also
important
something
point.
that I think the
Yeah,
Taliban represents. Do you have anything to say about that?
I think you're hitting something deeper on that in terms of how much of course, I mean, everyone fears men. Men fear men. Women fear men. That's the reality because they're stronger. And they also know, like, when you look at like the whole
Mhm,
gender thing going on here in communities, like there was a big protest in like Dearborn or wherever there's a large Muslim, where they were
mhm,
at the board going, we don't want this. There were men there were families there, and it wasn't just women. Like, here are the women, feminists go, where are the
mhm,
men? And it's like, though those are the men who will speak up, are the
mhm,
family men who will defend their wives and children. Whereas then you're mad when the men don't defend you.
mhm,
Well, because there's always a trade-off. There's a give and take
mhm.
of when you have to have, um, like why do I feel like, well, my husband, he's a great guy. I also know that he's gonna protect me as a human
Mhm,
being, as his wife,
mhm,
as
mhm.
even though I took
Yeah, and there's a
like
lot of women, I
essentially.
think, men and women who are in maybe, well, more women that are in denial of that. I had a bit of a row and row when I wrote an article
Huh?
because I was irritated. Maybe it might have been about this, about hearing about the patriarchy, like a capital T and P, the patriarchy. I'm like, the patriarchy is like a feminist fantasy, the patriarchy. And I'm not saying that there aren't misogynists or sexists or this type of
Sure.
thing, but it's like, and to tell these women, like, look, if you really believe that the quote unquote patriarchy was coming to get you, why aren't you organizing women only militias? Yeah, because
Yeah.
when you go down far enough, what protects your rights at the end of the day? Some dude with a gun,
Yep.
or if you have a gun, but it's usually a dude, like, historically speaking, and we do
Right.
not want to accept this. So it's the
Right.
idea that and it's great. Of course, women fought for their rights and they organized and they took all the slings and arrows. But it's also the fact that if you don't have enough men and enough women to agree with that, guess what? You can end up back in the burqa. I think it freaks them out
Well, I
to
think that
realize
it's
how fragile these things that some of us have come to take for granted, especially those of us who don't see gender identity as the problem that it is. And it's
yeah,
like, you guys live in societies where people pretend that men are women, and you think that you got patriarchy figured out for all
or
time,
just
or whatever you want to call it. I
it's sort of
mean,
a denial of reality. Like when I taught self-defense for a long time, and we used to have a lot of people there used to be really big classes. It was a lot of fun, and it was very empowering. And then everything shifted when it became, because it's about self-protection. Like the reality is, you're out there, you got to take care of yourself. You're driving, you have to be a defensive driver. You have to deal with reality. But then it became, of course, partially correct that men, we need to educate the men, which sounds wonderful. Like, okay, yes, that isn't going to stop people who are psychopathic assholes. Like, it doesn't stop them. And because it's
well,
too,
and it doesn't
and
change the
so
fact, it doesn't change the fact that if enough men decide that this women's rights thing was great, but we're done with it, we're screwed.
right, and so
I mean,
it's tying
unless
into that
unless
is
there are some women someplace who are like, Amazons, like in Superwoman or Wonder Woman, and women only militias and whatnot who can. It's like, if enough guys, and there's always going to be women who, also, nobody reproduces patriarchy like women do because we have the kids. Yeah, we raise the sons and the daughters, and we model this thing. I'm not saying it's our fault, but I'm saying it's we're in this together. Yeah,
it's not even necessarily patriarchy. It's reality of
yeah, yeah.
what
What? Yeah,
is,
yeah.
which is really that there are stronger and weaker people in this world.
Mhm,
That is, and some of them are bad.
mhm.
And you and
And
most,
testosterone does have an effect. Yeah.
and you can't really show,
Evolution.
oh, and but also to kind of see at times what the value of that is, and it
Mhm.
makes sense in a way because I've had children, I've been pregnant. I was hugely vulnerable as a pregnant woman, like
Oh,
more
yeah.
so. I'm like going waddling around going, I am very vulnerable because that's what I'm
Mhm.
aware of. And I go, wow, there's a reason why then you're like, if you look at even like evolutionary or something, your partner was there who was stronger, who didn't go through this condition because then they could help protect you. I mean, it makes
Mhm.
like there's a certain structural reason
Mhm.
for how societies,
Yeah.
and wow, it's usually been
Yeah.
male and female, and I know we're getting into all kinds of things, but that's usually the
That's fine.
basis unit of our society, of
Yeah.
humanity, that we don't exist.
Yeah.
And so they're always looking at like this like traditional thing, like icky,
Mhm.
ew. But the fact that like there's a lot of women who want the strong man. They want a
Mhm.
strong guy, and and they don't mind. Like I have no problems. My husband's, you go, oh, head of household. I'm like, we talk about things, but ultimately, you do need someone to make a freaking. Sometimes in a time of intense struggle, you need decision makers. You don't need
Yeah.
to discuss shit. You need someone
Yeah,
to
someone
say
has
we're
to
moving
act.
or going. And
And
so
that could be
this
the
like,
man or the woman or both, but somebody needs to act. Yeah, and I think also maybe subconsciously or unconsciously what triggers people about uh this figure of the Taliban and the completely covered hapless um Afghan women is that I think at some level we have to know, and it even comes out in our movies and books, that one of the reasons why the gender relations, or sex, I should say, the relations between women and men have changed also connected to technological change and economic change. Yeah.
yes,
So if you
uh-huh,
have all this stuff that frees up labor that you used to have for, washing and cooking and all this stuff, if you have a place where that gets freed up, and plus birth control and all that, then it frees up women's labor to do other things. Now,
uh-huh.
that could all go away. Hopefully it doesn't. We could all go away. And we see this
Oh,
in books, movies, and all this stuff. So I don't know if there's something like that they really need to be so upset or extra upset. So there's the surface level. So okay, the Taliban does this, they pass these laws, this is terrible, fine. But the focus on it, the more kind of
right.
it becomes like this these particular libidinized objects, psychologically speaking. I think it's because it symbolizes or it taps into these fears that we have.
Right. And I think
But
that
that
it's
could also go. We could end up some. We could also. Because also since it's 2024, you have this going over there, and so it's easy to focus, to personalize it, or to reduce it to the Taliban and this culture or this religion, to kind of as a defense mechanism for that could only happen over there, and if we just keep it over there, then it can't happen over here. I mean,
I mean, it would
kind of
be one.
elementary.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm on my computer. I didn't know if so far away. But the thing that is like if it was just like this culture, the Taliban culture, whatever that is, because it's millions of people over there. Some of them are not. They're not even Taliban, right? This is like okay, whatever. If that were that, it would be one thing. But because they're extrapolating it to everybody, that's when it's going to a different level. Versus because we pull out all kinds of weird stuff all over the world and go look at the Amish. I mean, the Amish have some weird stuff going on, but nobody's running to rescue those women. And so, but they're extrapolating it to 2 billion people, and it's like that's when it starts becoming like a then you go into more deeper or a different angle of the culture ideas, right? Like people are like used to say, here's a black men use.
Well, pretty soon they'll just be calling them a different species, I think. I mean, the racism is really getting to this thing. Like, there's really are no, we were wrong. There really are like distinct differences, and it's
Right.
in the it's in the blood and the soil or something, and we need
But then it's
to
okay to bomb them
gird
in
ourselves against this infection or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
right. It doesn't them. See, then you got the juxtaposition where it's okay that we bomb them in Gaza, but we got to rescue Afghan women. I mean, the post, we're going to rescue them through the Underground Railroad. I'm like, but you don't want them where you are.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, and it just was so absurd. And then, well, it's okay to bomb the other ones. I'm like, just kill all of them. Just why are you even portraying that you care about these women when really you don't? Because if you did, you would not be extrapolating conditions to all of considering how varied the cultures are. I mean, you could be, Muslims live in probably every country of the world. It's like people are just ignorant, but they're like, okay, but it's just this focus, and they've been drummed with so much fear of like, well, they're out to, they're going to conquer us, and it's like, for the most imperialist, like, I'm sorry, I mean, the British, they got on imperialism with anybody, right? Country, and it's like, what are you saying? I mean, I haven't seen, what's cut it. I mean, Oman, they're on their way. Oman doesn't. I mean, nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. Or,
that's why I think the irrationality of it is that they have the surface level concerns, and then you have the kind of the subtext. So it's like, okay, so for the people who are concerned about the demographic changes and the cultural changes in their country, it's like, it's this weird thing when you have this kind of this idea of this invasion, this cultural invasion. It's like, okay, well, who's invading who? Who's doing sanctioning to who? Who has military bases where? What are the and what tends to happen in places before you have these pushes of immigration? Not only so, it's like if you're just from the from the people's point of view who are concerned about the level of immigration from the Middle East and North Africa, they seem to have countries or governments that support policies and enact policies that seem catered to increasing those immigration flows. But rather than do
Right.
that, it's like, yeah, I don't know. But we have, this was interesting to me that
Mhm.
Victoria Smith, who writes a lot about gender identity, she wrote, "It's the constant escalation. At no point will they feel they've dehumanized women and girls enough because women and girls remain human and they know it." Oh,
I'm here.
there's a weird noise.
Oh,
Oh,
okay, I'm done. I just had something
okay,
for my son. Sorry.
okay, it's okay. I was like, are you sawing lumber?" I mean, it could be. It could be.
No,
Yeah.
I'm blending his smoothie for the morning, so
Oh,
or
nice.
afternoon.
Nice.
So anyway,
So
keep going.
so this was the thing that Taliban has invalidated all divorces granted under previous Afghan government. And so this was freaking people out, which of course, I'm not cool on that. But it's just again like, so they're very concerned about how the Taliban is dehumanizing um women and girls. But then again, it's just crying out. It's like this is happening while what's going on in Gaza is going on in the West Bank and now Lebanon. And I'm like, well, yeah, like Zionists treat Palestinians and now the Lebanese, but I don't remember the Taliban engaging in genocide. And this pissed some people off, and they came after me. And then I was like, oh, and they wanted to show me all these terrible pictures of the
Of course,
Taliban,
the
like,
pictures
you're
come out.
excusing. And I say, look, I'm not excusing anything. My thing is that if you're trying not to be a hypocrite, and trying not to apply different rules based on what people's religion or what they look like, then it's like it shouldn't matter who the victim or the victimizer is.
Mhm.
It's just if it's wrong, it's wrong. So yeah, if you have these issues going on, it's like, yeah, so it's like I'm not gonna. So the thing is that I'm fine with being critical of this, although I'm in no position to do anything about it because I'm not in Afghanistan, and I'm certainly not a part of a group that the Taliban is going or the Taliban is going to listen to or Afghan women are going to listen to. But I am an American. I can say, look, I can be like, if I really care about Afghan women and other women in MENA, the best what I can do is to do it whatever small thing I do to voice out, like, this imperialism, our adventurism and the colonialism and imperialism in this
Uh-huh.
area it does not helping women. So get out of it, leave it to themselves. They'll figure it out and whatnot. But to be all up in arms about the Taliban when you say nothing about Israel, or either you say nothing about it or you're defending it. I'm just
Right.
like, you know what? Middle finger for you. That's some serious top shelf hypocrisy. And the contradiction is crazy. So when they do it, if the, te- well, so it's like, it's just,
Well,
the
think of it
cognitive
this way.
dissonance.
All coming out now. I mean, I sometimes wonder if the Taliban even announces this shit. I really, I'm just like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
okay,
Based on
it's just,
reports. Yeah,
it's
based on
like, okay,
reports.
based on some report, like that, it's all, I think it's a concerted effort to be able to get the drums of war pounding again because they want people to think, yes, we're doing the moral good just thing, fighting these barbarians. And they did it like around Iraq. I mean, it's just this,
Mhm.
we're going to send propaganda after propaganda after propaganda to say, okay, we're justified in doing what we're doing because we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, and that's it. That's what it's like. It comes around. This is what they're justifying. They want people to support all our money going to these wars. I mean, there's really no other,
Yeah.
because simply
Well,
put,
yeah, you have the rainbow washing, and then you have I don't know if you call it pink washing, whatever it is, or women washing. So it's like if you can shroud or connect your militarism and your imperialism or your genocide or whatever it is with but look how terrible they treat women, or they don't have gay rights, so that somehow it's all right. Somehow that makes it okay. It's just like that's not how it should work. I mean, so and here's Dr. Evelyn also posted on this. Although I don't know why I don't know why they have Hamas soldiers with this Afghan woman. I don't know what's going on here. Or maybe I don't know what kind of picture this is because it looks like there's snow. I think there's mountains in the background. So this is in Gaza, but these look like Hamas fighters, and then this lady with the burqa. So this is quite the collage going on with this picture. But they want so again symbolically how this how you have the text and then the subtext. Yeah, so you have the literal meaning and then the symbolic meaning that people get when they look at these things. But she writes, the Taliban will be here we go. The Taliban, wait for it. This will teach them. This will teach the Taliban. Will be taken before the International Court of Justice. A massive kudos. So, and I'm just like, again, my whole thing was the Taliban cares less about the ICJ than Israel does.
They just kicked the two superpowers ass after 20 years. Like you think that they
and it's also these same people will probably be like, oh my God, the ICJ, how crazy that they sided in favor of the South African case, and that Israel's going to be at some point, who knows how long this takes, will be tried under the charges of genocide. But then it's terrible. But when it comes to the Taliban, woohoo, the ICJ, we're taking the case to the ICJ. It's like, oh, now the ICJ is good. Now it's a reputable institution. But when it comes to Israel, it's they're anti-Semitic now. All those judges.
Well, it's like all conservatives who are like, we don't need to be in Ukraine. Israel, fine. Hey, there you go. And I thought you were like America first. No, it's just so it is that hypocrisy, and it's just almost like sitting and talking to you. It's like these people. I mean, it's brainwashing, and it's very useful. I mean, you could see it where they're just like, oh my God, these terrible people, and it just extrapolates.
Well, also it allows them. Another reason why they love to hate the Taliban is because it allows them to moralize when you take issue with the utter propaganda and basically genocide defense or genocide denial, which are kind of two sides of the same coin, that they just gleefully post all over the place, and you challenge that. They want to be able to say, but they want to be able to throw this at you. Oh, you don't care about women, or you don't care about gay people, or you don't care about that. It's like, I can care about women and gay people and also be like, it's wrong to carpet bomb and totally destroy a contained area of people, or even if they weren't contained. But so here's a perfect example. Howard Clark. So I was saying something. He mentioned something about human shields or whatever. Like, you can't call. His thing was like, it's stupid to you can't call what's going on in Gaza genocide because they're just victims of war. And it's basically like, it's Hamas's fault, human shields, blah, blah, blah. And so I, just easily refuted that with actual evidence and whatnot. And then instead of dealing with that, he out of nowhere brings up Afghanistan.
Of course, I remember that. Yes.
So you refute the claim, the crazy human shields bullshit, which like that matters not for international. That's not a way. The rules of the game aren't okay. You can't so like collective punishment bad, siege bad, all this stuff, unless your foe is using human shields. Then go for it. Then kill anybody, and it's not your fault. It's like, that's not how it works. But Howard wants to bring up Afghanistan. It's like, what does that have to do with anything?
Then there was Bessie Bomber. She posted the Iranian guy with that. It was actually fixed tape. Yeah. That. Somebody was like, that's not, that clearly was cut and whatever. And she's like, this awful evil man used to put, like, they go from one thing to another because they
so you're trying basically saying that what's going on, you're trying to basically, and just based on not even just moralizing or like, oh, shouldn't you feel sorry for these people, but just based on the facts. It's like, what you're saying is just factually inaccurate. It's factually inaccurate. It's legally inaccurate. And we can get to the morals and ethics later if you want. But so Bessie Broddick, still October 2nd, she posted, glad to see, again, this comes into why they love to hate the Taliban. Because the Taliban is instrumental for them. They can it's useful for them. Glad to see I Stand With Israel is trending at number 1 in the UK. The anti-Israel, pro-Palestine wokester contingent may be noisy, but they are the minority, which really isn't. That's not true either. But anyway,
No,
so
it's
I write
not.
back. So I wrote back. Well, if so, how gross! There are so many genocide defenders. Western values are being unmasked at quite a clip. And so Bessie writes back. It's not genocide whenever you'll love this. This is from 2 days ago. Bessie's still saying this. It's not genocide when every effort is made to limit civilian deaths. Western values include valuing life, not valuing death, and promoting martyrdom. I know which of the two I value. I stand with Israel. So here's what I love. So this is all bullshit. Yeah. But she, she believes it. So this is going on and on. And
how old do you think Bomber Bessie is? She's got to be 65.
I don't know. But anyway, so somebody else, so this wasn't her response to me, but somebody else spoke in like, they take every precaution to avoid civilian death. Are you insane? And she writes back, I'm not insane. It isn't genocide. Hamas used civilians as human shields. If they didn't do so, loss of life would be significantly less. Why don't they allow civilians to shelter in the many tunnels they've built? Why don't they release the hostages? Okay, so.
How does she know there's not already some civilians in the tunnels? She has no idea. It probably may be some. I mean, we don't know. We really don't know. It's 2 million people, you dingbat.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great. It's like she's going to decide. She knows what genocide is. Okay. So first of all, calling civilians human shields doesn't mean they're not civilians anymore. It doesn't absolve anyone.
They're not
It doesn't absolve anybody. I mean, if I know we're not enforcing, that the U.S. has no interest in enforcing or protect or international law, but if we just were to look at the precedents, you don't get just to say human shields, whatever, even though it's bullshit. And also, another thing, of course, is that, but she doesn't care about this. She's maintaining that it's human shields and Hamas is responsible for everything. So it's like, okay, well, that isn't going to work, but fine. I mean, legally, it doesn't work. But of course, socially and politically, it's a different thing. And that's what it's all about. Because they're stigmatizing people so that people are less inclined to give a shit or to worry about it. It's like, yeah, it's bad, but what are you going to do? These crazy people.
Oopsie people. You know, I mean, and it just definitely has none of the, and then you take, I'm sure, I know this is a British value. I won't say claim to know, but to sort of take personal responsibility for yourself kind of goes out the window. Like they're forcing, it's that Golda Meir quote, they're forcing us to kill their children. It's like, what is wrong with you? And that's kind of this tone of like, well, and it's so,
yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Ew. No, it's icky. It's just gross.
Well, to me, just, but again, because then you realize, even though, and then I think, okay, I know that even if you just deal with facts and logic and law, it's not going to matter, but you don't know who might also, run into these exchanges.
Right.
So first of all, it's crazy. So first of all, like you said, okay, there's 2.2, or at least there was 2.2 million people in Gaza. They're all going to go into the tunnels. And then also, it's the most surveilled place on earth because it's a concentration camp. And then they would know where the tunnels are, and then they would just bomb those. And also, it's not just killing people, which is bad enough, but if you go out of your way to destroy the basic infrastructure that people need to live, that's also a genocidal act. And we're not making this up. They say what they're going to do, and then they do it. And then everybody like Bessie pretends that they're not doing what they said they're going to do. So that's the one thing.
Yeah.
And then I said this several times. I'm like, you're just as like the wife beater defense writ large. Look what you made me do. If they would just not make us angry, if they would just submit and either die quietly or expel themselves, self-evacuate, then we wouldn't have to kill all of them.
Yes,
so it's really their fault.
Yeah.
Don't make Dad mad.
I know.
But she was just like, It was just it, and no human shields, human. I'm like, just saying that civilians are human shields doesn't change anything.
Right. It
I mean,
doesn't
literally. I
change.
mean, for them it works because then they can just rationalize it. Well, you know, um, if Hamas, if people, if Hamas, if there wasn't hospitals and schools and apartment buildings and all this stuff where people were, then they wouldn't die when we bombed them.
I mean, but it goes to show
It's just, I
that
mean,
we
it was
very much,
crazy.
I
And she
mean,
would also, and you saw some of this exchange, and so she couldn't deal with what we were saying. And it wasn't just me; there was other people who were pushing back on this
yeah,
bullshit. And then she wanted to bring up, oh, the Ayatollah is a pedo, or look at the Taliban. And then it got on to like Islam is misogynist. And then we had these two ladies who were, I think they're in the UK, I'm not sure, but they're a lesbian couple. One of them is, I think, a Palestinian Muslim originally, and they're basically telling her like, look, what you're saying about my religion is not accurate, you know?
right.
So yeah,
Oh
are there
no,
individuals, are there instances, are there places like any other, if you have a group of 2 billion people, yeah, you're going to have
right.
this. But she was basically saying like, look, I'm Muslim, I'm gay. I've never been what you're how you're saying Islam treats gay people. I'm gay, I'm Muslim. I've never been treated that way. And she would not accept.
No, no, no. You cannot. If you,
It's like,
like,
no, Islam's the devil and it's bad. And that doesn't make me racist. That just makes me, not woke. And human shields, right to defend themselves, moral army. I mean, it's like these thought killing cliches are crazy.
oh yeah,
And I
they're
think, yeah.
mhm.
And I think that's my, one of my theories is the reason why they really are so happy about the Taliban coming into the news again is because it allows them to launder their silence or complicity with what's going on in Israel by showing, look, I care about Muslim women, I care about
Right.
MENA women, you
Mhm.
know,
Well, it's funny. There
just
was
not
the
those that
one
are being
where
just not those that are being terrorized and everything else by Israel with our full support. That's a different thing. There, I guess they deserved it. I don't know. Um, but
oh no, they're
it's
very. But now, I mean, we could see why things how terrible things in history have happened. You see it, and we're watching it unfold. Of like people really do get brainwashed,
yeah.
and then they want to justify their own fears and projection onto other people and denying and how they get to the point where they can deny basic humanity.
Mhm.
And it's just like you're like, what? And you can see how it happens, right in front of us with Israel. Like, if you can't see carpet bombing somebody, it's really not moral. It's just like it not.
Mhm.
It's just not a. Where is your morality? That's that. Then it comes into play when you then ask, where is your morals? Like, dear
Mhm.
God, what's wrong with you?
Well,
A
and
human being?
even it's also even you could take the politics out of it. Be like I don't know, it's complicated, Israel, Palestine, whatever.
Yes.
You can still just look at how this is being carried out and be like, this is crazy. This
Yes.
is wrong. You don't get to
Right.
do this, or you shouldn't be able to get to do this. And then we're from a country that could stop it and won't, and is telling us that it's raining when they're pissing when they're carpet bombing. That's telling us it's self defense. That's telling us all kinds of things, and we're like, why are you? They're not even lying to conceal. They're lying because they can. They're like, yeah, just gonna keep on. We're just gonna keep on with our narrative or whatever you want to call it, even though it's you know can't
Oh
withstand the
yes.
scrutiny. And what are you going to do about it? We'll just wait. People will forget. It'll all be over, and then it'll be fine. And
Well,
now
it's
they're doing the
funny.
same thing with the same exact playbook in Lebanon. Everything's Hezbollah, human
Yeah. Oh God.
shields.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, it's
I
the
mean,
same thing.
it's just like, okay. And why wouldn't they? They've been doing
What?
it for they've been getting away with it. So why
Mm-hmm.
not totally go balls to the wall and try to get greater Israel? Let's take Syria. Let's take the Sinai. Let's take part of whatever. It's ours, 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 ours. All
Great.
right.
Absolutely. Well, somebody posted on the Eli Afrat post about, Arab woman, and then some guy posted 70% of Iranian university graduates are women.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just
Doesn't
such
matter.
a,
And this is the thing is that
it's
if you're
so,
operating at the level of whatever you want to call it, our unconscious mind, yeah. So there's
right.
things we're conscious of that we can articulate, that we can agree, that we can accept and whatnot. And then there's things that we resist, or there's ways that we react and things that operate on our desires and fears that we're not consciously aware of. And when you're dealing with that, facts don't matter. Facts don't matter. Logic doesn't matter. Pictures don't matter. So it doesn't. We could say there isn't anything we could say to Eli and people who need to believe this or get satisfaction from believing this. It doesn't matter. We could put up any stat we want, and they will not. It won't matter because here we have, Eli Ariat. This is that simple. I am an Arab
Mhm.
woman. I can go to university. I can be a doctor. I can run for office because I live in Israel. And it's
But
like,
she's
well, there's
allowed because she has a headscarf.
yeah.
Oh,
Why is she covering? And
no.
first of all, I'm like, I wonder if this is even actually. I'm aware there are about 2 million Arab Israeli citizens. I'm aware of that who didn't get purged from the first Nakba and are able to who are there. I'm
Is it
aware of
that
that.
many? Is there 2
Well,
million? I mean,
that's the last thing I heard. I don't know. But
because
that's what I
I
heard.
mean, the population has decreased since it started because they realize some people are smart to get their ass out because
Mhm.
if World War III comes, that country is completely gone. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're
Yeah.
running because they're smart. They're the smart people to get out,
Mhm.
but their population. I thought it was more. It was not that many because
I don't. Well,
maybe.
see, this is just based on the last census or whatever. I
I
think
mean, it may be true.
there's
I
around
mean, but
2
then,
million, 2 million non-Jewish Israeli citizens.
oh,
But of
okay.
course, you
I
could be
mean,
an Israeli citizen. But it's this weird thing because as far as what I've learned is that Israel will say it's the nation state of the Jews. So anybody who's Jewish can come there and take part of Palestine. Um, but so you could but so it's that but there's the Israeli citizen, and then there's the nation state, which is supposed to be the nation state of the Jews. They try to be like we're for all the Jews, even though there's some Jewish people are like, hey, leave us out of it, we're not Israeli, we're whatever we are, American, Russian, Canadian, Mexican, whatever it is. um, so yeah, so the last thing I heard was about 2 million, but I'm not sure. It's like 2 million non-Jewish Israelis, and then the rest are Israeli. Um, but of course, this is bullshit because there's a lot of Arab women who go to university who've become doctors who can run for office,
oh,
not
sure.
only in Israel.
Oh, good God. It's
Palestine,
so.
before it was bombed to hell, Gaza, before it was bombed to hell in the handbasket, had one of the most, I think that their per capita had the most men and women with graduate degrees. And
Right.
like you said, people can show like, well, this is how many women graduate from universities in Iran. Here's how many graduate from universities in Egypt. Here's how many graduate from universities in Indonesia or whatever. But it won't matter because that's not the message that this is sending.
Right.
The
And forget
message
about the.
is something else.
And if
the
you
message
post
is
something.
the message is
Oh,
they're bad, we're good. They're misogynist, we're not. We're this is that it's okay, don't worry about it. We're not really, there's only certain groups that we were going to annihilate, not everybody. um
I mean, right. And if you even mention like the people who have been imprisoned in the West Bank and the women who have been assaulted there in prison, that matters nothing to these people. Like like
no,
they
there's
just don't even
crickets.
address it. It's
There's
like,
crickets.
oh, we'll think, okay, we don't want a guy here in our prison, but if those people, eh, oh well, I mean, and it would be one thing if people were just like, there are people I'm sure I probably disagree with on this issue, but they haven't talked about it. They're sticking
Hmm.
to their issue. I'm fine with that. Like, okay, fine. It's like, I don't know what certain people's stances are on this whole issue. Um, you know, people who I respect in
Hmm.
the sort of fighting this gender stuff. but that's fine. I mean, but the minute you start like demonizing people, I would feel that way if you demonized any group of people. It's
Yeah.
like you know,
No,
you
if the
know,
shoe
like
was on the
oh
other foot, I'd be like, whoa,
yeah,
hello.
it's just unacceptable
Mm,
in my mind. For you can't claim you're for women and then bash women, like
yeah.
or just bash humanity. It just makes no sense. It just means that there's more at play than we had we knew about
Mm.
you. You
Well, so
know, this is
Johnny Graz, he's great. He's a Twitter resistance. He's resistance tweeter. And so he has this meme, he replied to Eli with this meme that says, "Doing the meme murder goblin. Nothing shows our love for Arab women like slaughtering thousands of them a month." So it's just like I
yeah.
just thought, yeah, okay, so let's see. How are you doing? Should we wrap up or should we
Yeah,
continue
we
on
can
with
talk
the
a little while longer. That's fine.
Okay, so I want to
Uh,
move in now to the more psychoanalytical. We're going to get into our armchair
oh
psychoanalysis.
yeah.
Well, you're a therapist by profession. I've read um yeah, I
Well,
just yeah, I'm
you may
not
have read just as much as me. Who knows?
oh yeah, who knows? But it's interesting how just kind of just why this fascination, this contradictory, ambivalent fascination with the Taliban and with Afghan women, and because of course these women, people are lovely Zionist, Islamophobic, gender critical people, they would have a serious issue with these women probably, and they would find it hard to empathize or to put themselves in this woman's place. But they're very game. They're very excited to be on try to save Afghan women from the burqa. Um, very concerned about that, and very they're really bothered we've covered before, as we've talked about already, and as we know, they're really bothered by the veil, also the hijab, but particularly like the more covered or what a Muslim woman is, the more anxiety inducing it seems to be for large swaths of the Western population, and in particular feminists.
I mean,
Do you
even
have any?
these are the yeah. I mean, it's like and then the women who wear niqab are so small in percentage. You just get like oh, you know. I mean, it just gets
Mhm,
yeah. They just love to. There is something about it, and it's really. I think it's also what's interesting is we are such people are visual, right? We're all
mhm,
visual, except people who can't see. But that's how we interpret our world, and so I mean, how advertising works, how we can see like somebody who is visually very attractive. Like there are people
mhm,
you go, whoa, like that
mhm,
person has that beauty. We are all visual creatures. What this is saying is you don't get to look,
mhm,
and that irritates people too, because if let's say she is choosing this and there are women who are forced to take it off, so whatever, so if let's assume she is choosing this, she is
mhm,
saying I'm not here, like, and if you ask them they're like I don't want you to focus on my appearance, that's what I
mhm,
don't want you, that's why I'm doing it, because it's none of your darn business. And when you
mhm,
get like that you're like oh okay, it's like
mhm,
I don't want to participate in
mhm,
this part of what you value or the reality that this is how humans are. But I don't want to
yeah,
be seen as a picture, and because one of the things that's never ever talked about when we talk about society is how much of a benefit it is to be a good looking person. Like
mhm,
when you like how much things you do get because of
mhm.
how you look. And
Yeah,
so it is
video
part
kill
of
that's what I said, video killed the radio star.
I mean, look
It's
at
like,
like
"What? This
someone
guy looks like what?"
what look at the I mean I think like KJK, she's an attractive woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like she visually is a very attractive woman, and it's like there's an appeal to that. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like that's we're human. It's like, I'm not going to be one to be out. I'm like really not camera friendly, so whatever. But when people are like, I don't want to be, it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
when they see people go, if this is an internal spiritual thing of I'm going inward to myself and um, my connection to the greater spiritual being,
Mm-hmm.
like, and that's how it is. It really isn't just about what people are telling. It is to, in a way, like for Muslims, I mean, practicing this religious or whatever, this is the dunya, this is the world, it's a mirage. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get stuck in it. You want to be looking forward to living the best moral life you can so you get better, so you go to heaven. That's the
Mm-hmm.
goal is. And so when people choose that, it's almost like also a rejection of the outer world. And
Mm-hmm.
that is also very difficult for people to be like, I am not as I'm looking, I have a different outlook on
Mm-hmm.
the world. And so I think that's true for anybody or anybody of
Yeah,
a
it's not just the
spiritual or
they that
religious
it's not
being.
just the they thems that want to be affirmed. Everybody usually is looking for some affirmation. And so if you
Right.
have an example of people who don't ascribe to whatever you want to call it, your values, your way of life, your way of dress, whatever, somehow for some of us it's quite it becomes quite fixating.
I mean,
And yeah.
it's true. Like if you look at, I mean, all kinds of people that when you meet people who are really deeply on a different level, I mean, I've met a few people where you're like, they're just operating with a different almost energy and being in
Mhm.
the way the world is, and and people who are like serious, I'm going to use the word of sort of serious religious people, it's
Mhm.
all putting because they're like, I don't care about the same thing you do. And there
Mm.
is that we want to be part of a group. You have to care about what I care
Well,
about.
and it's
And when these women are, and when these
mm.
women don't sit and say, well, my goal in my life is, that like, here's this thing I saw something where, oh, well, we have to women getting girls into college. That's not a problem anymore because there's no boys left there. So we've worked on that. We've done that well. What's
Mhm.
been the consequence? But it's great the girls are there. But so that's not necessarily my fight or my issue. And if people have different issues they want, we're not saying to somebody like you're Tara, what are
Mm.
your goals and your dreams and hopes in your life? Go live them, minus you're hurting somebody else. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, but they can't. It's just like when you meet people, because they don't really, it's funny because they don't attack the Orthodox Jewish women, they aren't
Mhm.
attacking them, and they live, in fact, probably even more cloistered worlds than these women. She can go get a college degree. Just
Mhm.
because she's wearing a niqab doesn't mean she's not college educated, that she doesn't have her own, I mean,
Mhm.
her own
Yeah,
business,
and I
whatever.
think this is an excellent point. Just because if the women who dress like this, we think we can read so much off of it when really we can't.
Mhm. Right. I mean, we assume
Besides the fact that
that.
she's veiled, that's all we know for sure, and that obviously probably
And there's a
Muslim.
mystery. She's not giving me anything. She's not speaking. It's
Mhm.
like when we are
Yeah,
we
it's
are such a
disclosed. We
culture
don't
where
like
it's
it. Yeah.
like there's a picture of from this Rescue the Republic thing that happened that was in DC, and there was a picture of Jordan Peterson in his suit, his circus suit, and
Yeah.
Russell Brand with his shirt opened up,
Yeah.
praying, and it's like a look at me fest. This is like, I mean, in the West, it comes to be a look at me because you stand out. But in other
Mhm.
countries, I'm anonymous. And coming from martial
Mhm.
arts, it's funny. In martial arts, we all wear the same. We wear the uniform because
Mhm.
we're not about our inner. We're not about ourselves. Our actions speak for ourselves, not the false preach of our visual selves. In
Mhm.
that sense, it's like our character is supposed to speak for us. And it's like when we see somebody like this, it's like, oh, she's not giving me anything to grasp or to judge or to. We do. but you know what I mean? Like, it's like when I dole up, and people will say, well, I'm looking good for myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're any psychological, go back to B.F. Skinner and everything. We are conditioned. People are conditioned. That's what we are. We're
Mhm.
not all independent agents.
Mhm.
Like, we're not affected by how we experience
Mhm.
the world and what's around us. That is completely just like thinking I'm free and they're not. And it's like, well, I don't know, because now all these girls are free and they're chopping the breasts off. So I'm not sure what went wrong. But this
Mhm.
perception is somehow, no, no, look at what happened to them while we were so busy doing something. Our girls think that there is something wrong with their biology now. How did we
Mhm.
go from, I mean, you're of
Gonna
the
opt out.
generation.
Yeah.
You're,
Literally.
you're of the generation, I'm sure. I don't know how you grew up or whatever, but it's like the push where girls can climb trees, girls can do most of what boys. It's like oh, we're just individual people, and it's like, yes, okay, I thought we were there, and then you turn around, you go, girls are binding your breasts. I'm reading this in college, going, what is this? What went wrong? How did we get to where girls are, um, Tara's making bigots who are balls deep with blinker tribalism. Nothing else can make from you, but they will never see beyond their media fed up opinions.
Yeah, Hugh, you're probably right, and that's why I try to limit myself on X, because I'm also trying to build up my whatever I'm
Mhm.
calling it, my podcast and Substack, so I gotta be on there sometime. But every once in a while, I don't know why, Bessie just got to me, and I literally wasted like half a day arguing with that crazy woman. And I rationalize it, and I'm like, well, at least she's getting some pushback, and there was other people involved, so at least she's getting some pushback. And then you think, and then the other rationale is like, well, someone else might see it, the silent people who aren't gonna, like or respond or whatever, that can see that, just our different ways of articulating things. And it was just, then I think, okay, it's also content. But it was just like, I just was like really amazed at this woman after all this stuff, just being so, it was just almost, I almost had to have some respect for her, how committed she was to this nastiness. It's like, no, human shields, self-defense, a moral army, they do everything they can to avoid civilian death. She was on it. And then you challenge that, and instead of dealing with the challenge, and she wants, like we said, you're like, well, look at, what about Khomeini? What about the Taliban? I'm like, what about your crazy fever
Well,
dream?
that would call for, which is what people don't. There is a self denialism, and it's like that's why when people go to therapy, and it's like, well, I'm not here to, um, you know, I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is here to investigate yourself. She doesn't have that capacity to investigate um, how in the world I got to the point where I would believe mass carpet bombings, densely populated cities. Okay, like,
Yeah.
where am I? Because we've all made mistakes in our beliefs. I mean,
Oh yeah,
we're
yeah.
human, you know.
No,
But
and and just, I mean, this is how radical, I mean, she's been radicalized. I mean,
yes.
Bessie's been radicalized. Um, but
But do you think
and
it's always been there? Because I think it's like
also, I hear some
maybe.
noise in the I hear some noise in the background. Is it like a TV on or something, or?
Oh, that's my son.
It's okay. Well, I just was wondering,
Yeah,
because sometimes, it's okay. I can still
yeah,
hear
no,
you. Um,
okay. I'll mute
but
when
Hugh
I'm.
said Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iran. What do the women and children of these countries have in common? External oppression, masses spreading freedom via NATO and allies. Yeah, we covered that a bit earlier, but yeah, that's an agreement. But that we don't have to deal with any of that conveniently enough, because we can just be like, look at the Taliban, and oh my God, look at these poor women who are totally, burk it up. We can all that stuff. But yeah,
Oh, that,
if
one
you want
time
to
I.
help, and that's why when but when I probably went too quickly over the history of women's rights, so to speak, in Afghanistan the last 100 years, and it's like, what really kind of turned the corner on that was intervention. The proxy war between the United States and Russia. Well, no, well, Russia, but Soviet Union, that's when you have the Mujahideen, which was you know, whatever. They were united against defeating the opposition, and the U.S. funded them and all that. And then that's where the Taliban came up. And since that point, the position of women in society, the gains that were made that we would consider gains, you know, but that we can't talk about any of that. Those people are never going to get taken. They're never going to be held to account. The people that intervened and tore that country apart are never going to be held account at the ICJ. But we'll take the Taliban to the ICJ and pretend how fantastic we are that we did it. I mean,
And this false narrative that, okay, we're going into
and how dare
Afghanistan.
us not cheer along? We're bad. We're the buzzkills for not cheering along. You know, like, yeah, burn the witch. Like, you know. But for the Taliban, everything would be great. You know, if the people just would just go along and do what we told them to do, and go or follow along with the puppet regimes we toss up, this region would be so much better. Anyway,
I mean,
I wanted to ask you something, but go ahead. Sarah?
Yeah, go ahead. We can keep going all day, but
just because I wanted to, I noticed that Hugh had made some comments, so I didn't want to forget him. But I think that there's two things that came to my mind when I was listening to you talk about a few minutes back before I went into my regurgitation of imperialism, is that we tell ourselves, and I'm going to have the West, the we West, that, you know, oh, diversity and difference and culture, but it's very narrow, the diversity within that. So it's okay to be religious as long as you're not too religious. Yeah, as long as you're not so religious to the point that you're going to dress like this woman does. So there's this from that point of view, an excessiveness that's problematic, both titillating and problematic. So it's okay to be religious, but this is too much. And then also I think that in terms of sexuality or sexualized things broadly understood, not just genital, doing the whatever, but that if a woman is scantily clad, there can also be there's a sexual component when the woman's dressed like this, being almost completely, if all you can see the eyes, that's also has some sort of fascination or titillation, I think.
Sure. I mean, when I was young, I was in my seventh. I was in high school or whatever when the Iranian Revolution happened. So that was all on the news. You'd see these massive amounts of women in black, like here they were, because they're, I mean, people sort of sit and say, well, I mean, people were part of this revolution, right? It wasn't just one guy running the show here. It was a people's revolution. And, but there's a mystery to it, like what's going on. And there's absolutely a different way of the sexual component because there's a mystery under there. And we've become so desensitized in the West that it is shocking. It's like, well, why isn't it for my gaze? And it's not for my gaze, but I want to see it. And, and it's, I totally agree that there's something very mysterious about this look. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think and Todd McGowan talked about this in his he called it the racist fantasy, but that's I'm not going to get into that. But that how the Western media and feminists frame Muslim men under the Taliban, it's like they're portrayed, they have this unfettered access to patriarchy, like they're the most patriarchal people ever. There's unfettered access to that. So they're dominating women with a kind of, that they're really like, that they're getting away with something that other men don't get away with. Yeah, almost. And that the women are somehow also, I think, unconsciously, I'm not saying people would say this like, this is how they would articulate it or, not, but I think it's an interesting hypothesis That so the men are just like, they get to be the Taliban gets to be patriarchal in a way that, maybe not even the people in Saudi Arabia are. And then the women are also involved in these relationships that um are, yeah, foreboding. We can't even imagine. I don't know that somehow we're not that we want to have that, but that there's something going on there that just seems excessive, that just seems transgressive, just seems and it becomes almost sexualized, I think, on both aspects. That might be one of the reasons why the Taliban and Afghan women really grabs people. They really, it really resonates with them. Oops. Anyway, so my friend, she left. Oh, so maybe her phone died or something. But anyway, we've been going on 2 hours and 12 minutes. And I did have another section when I was going to go over. Oh, she's back. Are
Sorry.
you back?
Yeah, yeah. I hit the X button on
It's
the.
okay. No, it's all right. I just thought, because I'm used to, especially if you never know it with the technology.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, let's see. Uh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even just the frame of this picture, it has a mystery to it, doesn't it? There's a
Mhm.
mystery. It's exotic, and there's no, and let's say there is a component to it because, well, we are sexual creatures, right?
Mhm.
And and then it's like, but this is part of a part. It's almost like a denial of their representation is just a different representation of, because they talk about misogyny and these patriarchal men, and and the P Diddy's and blah blah blah. Like there's all this, like, where everything is out there, but women are participating in all of it. It's not like there's this massive revolution of
Mhm.
women going, I'm not going to do porn, I'm not
Mhm.
going to do whatever those spaces are where they can make. I mean, it's all over. So, and it's like, oh well, it's because they're oppressed and they have no choice, and it's like, but oftentimes it's not completely, that's not the story. People are like, they part of
Mhm.
them participates in this. I mean, it's just this, like, you go to a dance party and all the women are dancing and gyrating. It's like, it's like a denial of, like, they're just,
Mhm.
they may be approaching it in a different way of, like, there's an eroticism to, this is my privacy, this is my spouse's, this is his, that we're sexual beings in its private world between
Mhm.
us. And you know that's, may be
Mhm.
there, and
Yeah,
it's
that's why I
like,
think that
oh
yeah, and that's why I think it's fascinating to think about the fact that you have the surface level, which is just, on the conscious level, that, like, okay, the Taliban's doing this to women. That's bad. Look at these poor women. We need to, speak out about this. We need to do what we can. And I'm not saying that people don't believe that, but I think subconsciously, or in the in the kind of the um um unconsciously, it's like there's something that they have that we don't, or that they do that we're not allowed to, or that something like almost like in the from the Western point, like in our primal past or whatever, like the totem and taboo or something, certain things we've had to let go of or work past, that these people over here somehow are not. There's this mystery, this kind of weird psychodrama going on, I think, that
right,
taps into it. I'm just saying a different way of what you said,
right,
that they
yeah,
find they're both, that people are both repelled by but fascinated by,
oh
you
yeah,
know so
oh
there's very contradictory. And I think it's also with the scarf and what this woman's wearing. It's like, okay, um she could be wearing it for a variety of reasons, and it's a very and there's the ambivalence in covering. Is it her
mhm.
choice? Is it not? What kind of choice is it? Why are we so fixated on free choice, or whatever it is? But also the fact that, what if she feels empowered by wearing this?
Oh yeah, okay,
What if she likes that people can't, maybe this could be this whole unsaid or kind of this other vibe going on, both between
Mhm.
her and people she's not connected with, but between her and people she is connected with.
Oh yeah.
People that get to see her and the people that don't. There's all this eroticism
Mhm.
that I think people that I think that's I don't know how to articulate, but I think it's also there that could be something that where people will, if they focus on the surface level of the injustice of it from their point of view, rather than this kind of for lack of a better word, the bindle connections that they have, this excessive privacy or concealment that they have that bothers us somehow. No, we want to. You can't be covered. No, it's like,
And
well,
I would even add that within certain, I'm going to use the word feminist circles, that um, that there is a um, because I remember being involved in the Women's Center in college years ago, way 30, 40 years ago. And, when you get into sort of the political ideology of feminism
mhm,
and all of this, blah, 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 it's also, the fact that often there's a, um, because I'm not like that, I want to, like the people who really do enjoy the feminine, I'm going to use the word feminine side of themselves. They like that part of themselves that works for them. And
mhm,
and some people can't relate to that. And then it's like, well, why would you, like, there was somebody who was talking about, it was something with like some old clip of Julie Bindel where
mhm,
she was just like, when she was younger, she was like, how can you be speaking for women and go home to a man at night? Like, there was a clip and you're like, okay. And that's sort of part of it, is like this,
mhm,
that many people do have these sides to themselves, and you know, and
mhm,
and it's like they can't relate to it, and so they want
mhm,
to say, well, it's all bad, and you're really forced to do it, because if you really knew what you wanted, you wouldn't choose this. And
mhm,
it's like, oh my God, it's um, and I don't know that many niqabi women. They call them niqabi women, but they're nobody's making them do that stuff. They're like, I
mhm,
mean, because you think that what courage it takes in the West to walk around like this. I mean, I see very few, most people
mhm,
will wear a scarf or
mhm,
no scarf, whatever, but it actually takes balls to do this in
mhm,
the West, because you are a sitting target,
mhm,
for assault. I mean, it's just like, I mean, one woman was on Suleiman's pod, their space, and she's
mhm.
British and she's Western. She wears her scarf. And it's been pulled off. I mean, so it takes
Mm.
it
Well, here,
takes
and this is the
enormous.
most amazing thing. So, like, the idea that these people who would be that somehow there's a difference between wanting a woman to wear a scarf versus wanting her not to.
It's still you.
It's
Yeah,
like, so, and I'm sure that if someone pulled off a scarf, and be like, "Oh, well, good," because if they tell themselves,
yeah,
or maybe who knows, but the guy could just been being a dick. It's a dick move anyway. But let's say they thought that that the woman didn't want it anyway or whatever. I mean, that's also a weird thing. They know what they know what the women want. But if someone pulled down somebody's skirt, we'd be aghast. But if someone was saying, oh, the headscarf, and somehow this is it has a different connotation, which is odd, but it's still a violation. It's like, who the f are you to tell these people what to wear?
it is. And when you push them on
I
that,
mean,
most of them will agree that no
mhm,
one should be assaulted. Like, they will at least get to that point.
mhm.
Now Bessie, I don't know,
No,
but
Bessie probably not.
yeah, but most people have some level of like, well, people should be
Bessie, the Zionists could kill every single Palestinian, and she'd still be saying, "Well, they did everything they could."
right. And
It's
it's
just
it was.
she's off the reservation there, I
I
think.
have really yet to ever see any of these rabid genocidal people at all acknowledge that Israel has made any mistakes, like
Mm.
There's nothing they could, like, if you say to them, why did they just shoot they could have just got rid of the Hamas leaders.
Mhm.
They could have. If they,
Yeah.
I mean, if Iran just bombed 3 targets and didn't kill a civilian.
Mm.
How they managed that, like, right? And they even warned
Mhm.
them it was coming. It's great. And they got it, so they got out of the building. It all worked.
Mhm.
And
No,
um,
well, I'll add to that on that. I wrote a Substack on this, but when I was
uh-huh.
I wrote something I think in November that Israel isn't targeting Hamas, and I can and I'm convinced of this. And one of the reason why is because when I lived in Gaza for 2 years, they would take out Hamas people left and right, or also Arafat was still alive at that point, I think. So what would happen is because they have informants, either people who are willing who willingly inform on people inside Gaza because they have an axe to grind, or they're getting blackmailed for whatever reason. So every once in a while, two Apache helicopters would come in, and you'd hear an explosion, or you'd hear about it, and it was them going in. Someone would mark or target where the Hamas person was going to be, or uh, another group was going to be. They'd mark the car, and usually the person would be in the car, and then they would bomb the car. And it'd be only the people in the cars that happened to be next to them at the point would be damaged. They were doing that for years. These targeted assassinations. So it's not that it's there's and it's not and so this human it's so it's all bullshit. It's and we know this, and it's amazing that people still can't even countenance it. The fact that Hamas is the excuse, the kids and the women are the target. If you're worried about a population growing in number and you want to decrease it, who do you kill or get rid of? The kids and the women. I mean, but they just can't I don't know if it's because they've been so conditioned to think of Israel in a particular way that it doesn't matter what comes out, they can't let go of it. But it's like this is some serious dark shit, nastiness, and our government is all all in. If it wasn't for the United States, Israel wouldn't be able to do this. So of course we should say something, even if it falls on flat ears or it's just to Bessie or whatever, just so I can live with myself, making it about me. But anyway, rant over. What do you want to say, Sarah?
um, I think we both have had our rants, I guess, right? It is what it is. But yeah, I think it's just. I mean, you got to do some of it, but yeah, you can only handle so much of it because I just imagining, like, like for you, I mean, you were there, you knew these places, and it's like it's gone
Mm.
forever. I mean, and the chances, I mean, it's uninhabitable now. I mean, it's like, and until Israel is stopped, these people have,
Well, that's what they
you know,
get. They made Dad mad. You know how he is after he's had 3 beers.
and but it's like funny. It's not. It was just simply an excuse, as you said. It's not even that he this has been planned. I mean, like they've been planning to get rid of these
Oh yeah.
people for a while, so it's more of just
Mm.
um,
No,
you
they
know,
yeah. I mean, this is. I mean, it's quite clear, and anybody that has once you look into it and you see you learn more about the foundation of the quote unquote state of Israel and Zionism and whatnot, and you connect the dots, you're like, this has been a slow burn, and whenever they've had a chance, the basically from day one or from Nakba one or from whatever, whenever they have a chance to purge any way to get rid of to get rid of Palestinians, they do it to the point they can get away with. So October 7th, in that way, was a fantastic blessing, a gift to Netanyahu and others. I guess the majority of the population. It seems. I don't think there's a. I don't think. I don't think. I think that the liberal Zionist has become like a unicorn. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't really. They don't really exist. I think. um. Anyway, one last thing before we wrap up, is that I also think that this kind of this Western savior, this kind of savior narrative, and I think that on the surface, it's about the Afghan women. Yeah, the Taliban's bad. The Afghan women, we have to help them, and but it's mainly about us or about them. So it's not really about empowering Afghan women who may, who they know, like you talked about when you were, when people would go to these places, these NGOs, and set up something and wonder why they're not being used by the locals. Is that it's mainly about the Western feminists and the governments positioning themselves as they're the enlightened saviors. They know what's best, and that it totally ignores it just denies them any kind of agency or personhood or history or context or any of that. And then when these women, these the Taliban, or especially these women, I think this is also and I mentioned this before, we mentioned this before, a kind of a subconscious, or no, an unconscious, at an unconscious level, that they get really irritated at these women for not who don't want to be saved, or who don't act in what they think is their own best interest. So I think there's a thin line between concern for Afghan women as they're depicted in the West, and yeah an anger, or maybe even a hatred at an unconscious level, for them not doing what they think they should be doing.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it pretty well. I mean,
Wish to
it's
help, yeah.
sometimes. I mean, and there are a lot of players in this. I mean, there are
Mhm.
people like Bessie and the armchair people, and then there are people who are raking in big bucks off this stuff.
Mhm.
We're going to go in and um, you know save people or help people, and it's the post-colonial way of controlling things.
Mhm.
I mean, just so many stories. It's like that's one of the reasons I never went into these things, because I'm like, man, this is so messed up. Of how all aid works and blah blah blah, and the control, and really the filling of the coffers of the people. Like, I remember I was reading this book of this guy. He was deaf, and he was a Peace Corps volunteer in some, I forget which, it's been a while, which country
Mhm.
in Africa. And he's there. He's a Peace Corps person. He's getting paid, not a lot, but he is getting money in the bank, and he's getting the best thing on his resume to get a job. So he's doing something good, but he's getting rewarded. And he's
Mhm.
telling these people, that the local people, I love these people who come in, and we'll build a well. You can volunteer to build a well, and they're like, pay me. And he's just was like, well, they're like, you're getting paid. Why can I get? Why are you getting paid to make me volunteer to build the well? Like, and it was just this illogical ideology of just like, well, we're going to help you and fix you. And it's same with all this, like, oh, we're helping women, and it's like, really, are we really helping women by importing dress codes? Like, not that's not really what people
Mhm.
are concerned about. And so we don't really actually listen to the people, which means they really would like no wars. They would like to be able to feed their families and have an economy that's going. I mean, all these basic fundamental human needs. And then they'll get there when they get there. But it's like, if I can't eat, what you're worried about doesn't concern me. And
Yeah, if
and
there's
then
just
it's
general
like,
lawlessness and just how things break down over the last, decades of intervention and civil war and all this stuff, it's like none of that is a fertile seedbed for changing, for bolstering and empowering women. I mean,
and then they also look at it
regardless of
as,
how they wanna dress in public.
and for the people who aren't like just to say the average village woman per se, but people are educated. They're like, why is it that all these people who hate my religion, or even hate religion periodically, completely, like but Islam is the big target these days, so Christianity, why are they doing this? And so there is I mean, the difference in my first visit to Pakistan to my third visit, because there was like, oh, I'm welcome everywhere, and I was. And
Mhm.
by the third visit, it was funny. I was there, and somebody on the street was like, "Are you a missionary?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a missionary." But it was this because distrust had happened so much because everyone is like, you are trying to change me. You're not really truly helping me. You want to import your self onto us, and that's then there's and it's just like you perfectly said, it's a infantilism of women, and it's absolutely true that somehow if they knew better, they would be like us, and it's just a rejection that the vast majority of the women of the world are not like you. They aren't. You're a small, white people, white West is a very small percentage of the population when they count it. And it's like, where are you getting off? I mean, Russian women are Russian women. I mean, it's like South African women are South. It's like they're all not going to be like you, and they don't want the stuff that they may find part of your culture negative. They don't want that. They would like to figure themselves out, and that's it's because there's no real empowerment. It's a disempowering ultimately, because you're saying my choices and what I believe are not good enough, and I have to become like you. I have to be somebody who doesn't, who you don't believe in, like, because a lot of them because it's funny, the rise, like after there's been always this anti-Islam thing for a while now, because that's been our common enemy since we got rid of the Soviet Union. And so then you have it's sort of a rise of the new atheist movement. And that's like people like Sam Harris. He's one of them. There's a couple others, and and they sort of died away because but now they're all back in like business now, because they can talk about the evils of this. They'll never attack Judaism. They will never attack Judaism, even though and so it's really about this, and it's really like this fear or this dislike, I think it's also, Tara, I think some of it is they're just like these, like when my husband just laughs at this. He's a very devout Muslim. He goes to prayer. He leads the prayer. And he just is like, it's all as God will. It doesn't even bother them that they're just like God is. It's all up to God, and they do. They have a deep faith that God is doing what God is doing, and they are just like. And in fact, it actually, you're spreading the word. By you're spreading hatred, you're spreading the word, and the people who will hear more about us, and some people will ask better questions, and we get people joining us, and so they're like, fine, you keep talking. It's almost like free press, because Muslims don't go around like Christians of like converting people. They're like, if you ask questions, I'll answer them, but I'm not going to say I'm going to try and convert you. But if somebody then asks a question, I can answer.
That's interesting. I never thought about that, Sarah, that when you're going around and you're in cities or whatnot, and if someone walks up to you and they want to talk to you about religion, I've never had someone do it who was trying to tell me about something about Islam.
No, it's
I've had it
not.
with Christians and Jehovah's Witnesses and other people who are Mormons, or whether who are supposed to. And it's almost like, it's really interesting. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And it's not just with Islam, some Muslim people, it's with others. That if you're if you're secure and confident enough in your faith, you don't need to affirm it by trying to convert others. And you don't need to affirm it by dragging down other faiths. It's just your faith.
And keep in mind that
the Amish also aren't trying to recruit. They're like, we're Amish, whatever. And I guess they have that thing where the kids can go off and come back. They have that 2-year window, whatever it is. I don't know. They can decide.
That I think this ties into is that one of the big things of why, like, now you have BRICS coming in, you have all of these things. In Islam, usury or interest is forbidden. So you don't go into debt, borrowing money. You can imagine the banking system falling apart when they can't make 18% interest on somebody, or a credit card. And so there's also this, where is all this stuff also originating too, that filters down, just like the gender thing. And these people are blind to being like, well, yeah, if these countries are like, I could get what I'm like, oh, you people, you think of all this evils of Sharia law. They have no freaking idea what Sharia law actually means. But it's like Sharia law, I can loan you money. I cannot make I cannot feel you interest for that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, imagine how our economy would be if people weren't into freaking debt, paying off
Yeah.
these things that they, because you should pay back your debt, but you're not added on. It's like, well, that's not a bad system, is it? Is that really
Mm-hmm.
so terrible that you would want to be
Yeah.
able to get a house and not owe more money than you pay for it? Like, wow. And so then you have, I think, higher, all the filtering down from other interests that come into play, where it's just like we're going to keep the cultural wars going, because if the people all figure out that we're really not all that different, and the ones running
Mm-hmm.
the show, just because this woman wears a scarf doesn't have it, it doesn't, it's like such a way to get people revved up, that it's like, now, like, my sister is probably a rabid, I would say, very strong communist, and she's out there, right? And that very strong economic voice. She's like, she hated the woke stuff, because she's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not about this. It's about people being able to have a place to live and affordability and not having oligarchs. And so she hated the woke stuff just as much as the right people did. And it's like, yes, we need to challenge who's giving these messages. And these people don't want those people running their show either. And it's like, well, we're going to sort of, they don't want the WEF running their countries either. Well, why are
No.
we uniting against, but no, they get a war and here we go. And it's like, oh, well, it's hopeful. I think I think through the internet, I
Mm-hmm.
start to see there is hope that there are a lot of people who aren't like the Bessies. There are all over the globe who are so sick of this war thing. They are so
Mm-hmm.
tired. They want to just trade and
Mm-hmm.
live in peace. Most people are like that in the world. You know
No,
this.
I think that of course silence and whatnot, but I think that I know I agree with. I mean, worldwide, yeah, of course. Even in the UK, though, I think that she's mistaken if she thinks that everybody's on her page. I mean, there
Yeah, well, I
are.
mean,
I mean, there's more than a few, of course, and of course, the government does stand by Israel still, no matter what. At least officially, and they're still
you
sending
see
them stuff.
you see
But
the
we'll
pictures
see.
in the
Because I like
video.
to remember, I like to remind people of the. I'm assuming it's the case of most countries, all empires. Well, maybe not, but at least I like to
Yeah.
remind people that, like, of what Kissinger said, that the U.S. does not have friends and enemies; it has interests.
And
Yeah.
and
So
we are in
the
and
Zionists shouldn't be too comfortable that they'll always be a lot that the United that the powers that be in the military industrial complex or whatever of the United States will always consider their interest to be aligned with the Zionist project. That could
and
switch, and if it does, oh well, then you'll just be getting thoughts and prayers rather than guns and ammo and political cover
and
at the UN.
and empires fall and all of this, and so
Mhm.
everything is going to be shifting
Yeah.
anyway. It's like, and the fact is, I'm like, look, Bessie, if you don't keep reproducing your population, other people are, and you're just going to be small. Like I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
who's having the children,
Yeah.
and they know all about the issues with the population in many countries, and it's like, do you know who Amy Wax is? This is a funny story. Do you know who she is? She's a professor at University of Penn who they've been trying to oust because she's pretty.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because she's yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I've heard a bit about this.
She's obnoxious, but she has points of like free speech, and I'm all for that. But she said she was talking to Glenn Lowry, and she said, "Well, I don't really want immigrants from like far Asia because those people are too passive and will be Democrats." I'm like, but they're so law-abiding citizens. Like, they are the most least crime people, and they work hard.
It's
And
like the
I'm like,
menu. Yeah, yeah.
what a stupid twit
I
that
think it's
you
so
don't
hilarious.
want to.
It's like a buffet. It's like a buffet of immigrants. Well, a lot of people are the same. I mean, of course, and that there's gonna be an immigration policy one way or the other, and then it's gonna be and then how it gets implemented or not is another level of
Right.
politics and economics. But it's just like this idea, like this buffet is like we'll have a little bit of them and a little bit of them, and it's always about this. And even with Vivek Ramaswamy, it's like, oh, they have to speak English, share our values, and they have to be able to, they have to be, he wants like everyone wants like the upper crust, highly skilled migrant immigrant, and I'm like, that's why I think it's bullshit. It's because does Vivek not realize the various sectors that are or that are interested in immigrant labor? Who's gonna, like farm work and other stuff? Not that's the only thing that
Construction.
immigrants do, But it's like,
Oh,
yeah, and the domestic work and the gardening and all this stuff. I'm not saying people don't come at me. I'm not saying that's all they do, but it's like, it's like, who's going to do this?
well,
I
I
mean,
think it's
are they going to
just
start? Are they going to have to start paying more? And they're going to have to start. They're going to the culture, at least like the mainstream pop culture, is going to have to stop demonizing that type of work. Yeah,
well, I mean,
and pay it
it's
better, or or something. It's like this idea that somehow and this is, I don't want to get too off topic, but I just was
that's
yeah,
another
I'm gonna
topic
stop
for
myself.
another
I'm gonna stop
day.
myself because we have to wrap up pretty soon at some point. I think I'm gonna have to. Ooh,
Yeah.
well, maybe somebody else is cooking already. Hopefully, um,
I mean, it's like that. Then they want to rescue the Afghani women, but they don't want them there. But we're going
mhm,
to help them escape and go to. I sent the clip to my friend in Karachi about like, they're going to go to the underground. I love the Underground Railroad. I'm like, what are these people thinking?
mhm.
And it was just like they're.
Well,
I
I
think
wanted to be a
they're.
bit of a smartass because I saw that
Oh
they
my
that
god.
I think the U.S. it was the UK that it got agreement that if some all the only thing that an Afghan woman would have to prove in order to get asylum, the only thing that an Afghanistan person would have to prove to get asylum to the UK right now is that she's a woman. And I'm like, well, can she identify as a woman, or does she have to be like a woman? What about a guy who identifies? I mean, because then when push comes to shove, we all know that everybody knows the difference between women and men. But this is the same government that thinks that a guy who identifies as a woman is as much as a woman as a woman is. And I'm like, well, what if an Afghan person said that they identify as a woman? Could they get in? And what about her? Does it account for her children as well, or what's going on here?
How does
But
this
yeah,
work?
it's just so the contradiction and the hypocrisy is off the chart.
And
Um,
but the idea we're going to rescue them, like we're
mhm,
on white knights on a horse to rescue the damsels in distress over to mountainous countries, and then they're like, well, they can't go to. It's just as bad in Pakistan, even though there's 2 million refugees. It's like 2 million or was in
mhm,
Pakistan. I'm like,
mhm,
well, they're already overflowing in Pakistan, and then they're like, oh well, maybe they'll go through Iran. Oh no, oh God, they're evil too. Like they couldn't get the. I'm like, what do you? Why don't they go through China? They could go up. Oh, you know what I mean? But their idea, we're going to rescue them, and then you're like, but after you rescue them, where are you going to put them? Maybe you can send them to Gaza because they're all the. Oh no! Then they can't rescue them. I mean, it's just this like, what
mhm,
are you people? I mean, that post I saved, but by
mhm,
what's your name? And she's very nice, but this, oh God, we're rescuing these women. And I was like, maybe you could just do something
mhm,
else with your time and go fix our government so that we stop tormenting these people. I mean, like you think about it, like this is a country with like is a mountainous, very poor country as a whole, except its resources, which is why we really went in there because they have a lot of gems and minerals. And the
mhm,
Taliban just smacked their ass and said no. And
mhm,
but we're empires go to fall. I mean, that was where Alexander the Great fell. I mean, you are not going to take over these people and and they're fighting with no freaking boots, and it's winter. I was like, it's like when they're comparing Hezbollah fighters to the Israeli call-ups, and you're like, oh my God, in hand to hand, they're going to die because they're
mhm.
not strong. They haven't been fighting imperialism for decades. And so
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah.
but yeah, we
Oh,
should probably go.
yeah,
This
because we're
one,
starting. I'm sorry.
you're,
I could talk on and on, but I'm starting to run out of gas. But
yes, I
we'll
understand.
do this again, Yellow Zello. Sarah, thank you very
Yes,
much for coming on. And we've been talking about the broad topic of why the West, particularly Western feminists, love to hate the Taliban, um, from a variety of different angles. And my guest has been Sarah, who is she's an American. She's born and raised
a random
American.
person you met on
I met
Twitter.
yeah, I met a cool you can meet cool people on X. This is true. Yeah, we've
Yes,
done
yes.
battle. We've we're part of resistance Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been great. I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, I've always enjoyed your posts and your conversations with people, and it's just like I just want to be like, this is a bit. but because most people, and especially there's so few people that really, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm not an expert even on Islam or Afghanistan, Pakistan. You're not an expert on Gaza, but we have a different view of experience by being there and not being so quick to groupthink. We're moving away from.
It's harder to manufacture our consent. That's and also harder to shame us into silence.
Right. So
it's like, call me what you want.
Yeah.
This is wrong. I'm not going to pretend that self-defense that what Israel's doing is self-defense. Sorry, not going to happen. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll do this again sometime.
Breaking: Israeli attack in Iran is imminent. Okay, gotta go check the news.
Oh God, here we go. Well, I'll see you I'll see you in Resistance Twitter.
All right, thank you.
Bye, Sarah. Fun. So please do tune in. Please do like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you all.